Happy Easter, everyone. Welcome into Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I pray that you embrace and celebrate the true meaning of Easter today. I hope you enjoyed it with family and friends, even under these very strange and odd and adverse circumstances. So again, happy Easter. Glad I could come on here. I apologize for the delay. Thank you so much for hanging on for 15 minutes. It is part of our off-season schedule, live stream off-season schedule, to come take a call-in show your way each and every Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So here we are at 10:15 Eastern Time to take your calls on college football, 860-325-3687. I've got a ton of topics concerning college football and a number of angles concerning breakdowns, analysis that I think you will enjoy that are going to be headed your way in the next several days and in the coming weeks here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. The Super Chat is on. If you understand our vision of what we are building here at the Voice of College Football, please support us on the Super Chat. You can also send any donations to Venmo or PayPal at Mark Rogers TV. Also, during this season in which most of us are staying far, far away and staying clear of the stores as much as possible, and most of them are shut down, of course, and hopefully the economy will be back up and running at some point soon, shop Amazon and use the link in the description section of any of the videos to shop Amazon. And if you use the link, it's the same exact shopping experience. Just please use the link in the description sections and you help us build our channel. All right, let's get to it. Let's talk some college football, or we are less than 2 weeks away from what is a segue between college football and the NFL, of course. This is my copy of the NFL Draft Bible. On Friday, we had a 1-hour live stream with Rick Saratella of the NFL Draft Bible. Great conversation with Rick. Hopefully you caught that. If not, of course, the video is posted to our channel here. We ran down Rick's analysis of all the defensive positions, and over the next several days, you will see our breakdowns of quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, offensive linemen, tight end, all the positions on offense right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Rick's going to join us again next week to take your comments and questions. And also, I have a number of questions for Rick myself. I am also posting videos here which will cover various schools' NFL draft prospects. Talked to Arizona State recently. Ohio State, Alabama are coming, and many others. All right. We'll take your comments and questions as well. And, of course, your call-in numbers, 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. And once again, if you love the NFL draft, I encourage you to head over on Twitter to the NFL Draft Bible, or you can just go to NFLDraftBible.com and sign up for his yearly analysis. This is so in-depth, I haven't even cracked it open yet. Oh, I get a little message in here from Rick. Mark, appreciate all your support of the draft and some other things that I can't make out as chicken scratch, but I'm sure, Rick, that it is that it is very complimentary through the years, my man. There it is. I got it. All right, let's take our first call, 860-325-3687. You see the number on the screen. And again, I think I've got some really interesting, why didn't that take that call? Whomever it is, please call back. I don't know what the deal is. There we go. Might have something to do with me needing to put in my passcode. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? You know, Navy, give me 2 seconds here. I made a mistake with my mic setup, and because this call-in system is all screwed up, what I need to do is I need to take myself off this. No. I'm doing fine. I got your approval. I'm doing fine. Okay. Oh, well, I know you are. Uh-oh. Yeah, which is?
3 days, I've been hunting on YouTube and everywhere else, talking about this coronavirus BS in the college football season.
Yeah.
I know you guys talked about it with the Ohio State guys.
Yes.
And I tried to throw that to you when you had Cam on.
We answered all your questions, Navy Thomas. We answered all your questions.
Yeah, but I'm just telling you, I've been popping around, and what I've been finding that even what's the name of that Clemson coach?
Dabo Sweeney.
Yeah, he said something. He doesn't know what's going on, and I just wanted to see you do a full session of where this is going, because I don't think it's gonna, like I've already told you, they killed March Madness. Yeah. They killed June College World Series. They killed all the spring practice games. Some people like to mention, July, August, September, and I'm just like, man, I'm just going with, we don't have a vaccine for this, so I think you can wash out till maybe winter, and maybe the freezing cold will kill the coronavirus. I don't know. That's all I wanted to. That's the only thing I wanted to throw you at a baseball.
Actually, Tom,
so
the factor concerning the weather is the exact opposite. The doctors have determined that the nicer, warmer weather will be more beneficial for us.
Oh, heating will kill off the. I don't think that happens in China, dude.
Well, I think it's similar. I think it's similar to the flu in general. Just in general, people lock up the doors and windows during the winter, and it creates stale air, and there's not fresh flow of circulation of air. I think that has much to do with it. But the thought is that if there's going to be a rebound of this, it's going to come when it gets cold again in the fall and winter next year.
But I'm going to remind you one thing.
Yes.
Because I do have a little bit of respect from him, is Kirk Herbstreit. Okay. He thinks they're going to cancel the season.
Yes, he does. And people are taking issue with him stating his opinion. I don't have any issue with anyone stating their opinion. I think we just all need to understand that Kirk Herbstreit is a football expert. He's a football. Let me repeat that. Football expert. He's not a medical. He's not running the charts.
I consider you a football. I consider you a college football expert.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But you don't hear me trying to project if there's going to be a football season. Do you want me to take this from the top, Navy? It sounds like you're wanting me to give you my opinion on whether we're going to play a football season.
I just wanted you to make it a complete, chat group with everybody from the college football from the Voice group, because we have that with the crowd. So,
well, we've certainly talked.
And all I had to say is Happy Easter. I'll let you roll with it.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to address it in terms of what I think. but I'm going to say it right off the top. I'm not an expert. And even the experts don't know, because society has to be reopened in increments. And even that's a mystery as to how we're going to be able to contain this when we reopen society.
I just wanted to bring it up and cover it. And I've got that brain stroke, and the doctor says, I'm not coming back to see the doctor until July because this virus shit's going on.
So is that really
no big deal? I'll let you roll with it.
Well, Tom, I'm concerned here. So that seems as though that's really affected your recovery.
I'm just concerned that I'm not going in to get a blood test to test my cholesterol level from the arm. Blood test. Even though I've cut it down from 200 down to around 100, but yeah, that's minor shit. That's just me. But
well, no, it's not minor.
I just want to bring this up with this virus goddamn shit, because I'm just not seeing anything that's coming from ESPN, CBS, ABC, NBC. Nobody's really talking about it, about the college football schedule.
Okay. I will do my best.
Season.
I will do my best to take this on.
All right, my friend.
All right, Tom.
Nice talking to you, man. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. That is one of the faithful ones right there. Navy Thomas, YouTube channel. And when Navy Thomas first started watching, I thought it was amazing. And the indelible memory that will be etched up here for probably ever will be the time that I discovered that Navy Thomas was a faithful supporter, and this was years and years ago. And then I went on his YouTube channel and I saw a video in which, and at the time that he had tons more subscribers than I did. I might have had 50 subscribers. I don't know what I had. And he probably had 5,000 or 6,000. And I catch this video where he's riding his motorcycle and he's talking politics. He's talking just what's going on in the community. He's talking all sorts of things. And then he brings up MarkRogersTV. You got to go over to MarkRogersTV to check out his analysis of college football. It was just funny. Just hit me funny. All right. It's good to see all the regulars in the live chat. So here's my thought about the coronavirus and college football. Okay. Understanding that I don't know anything about the medical aspect of this except for what I see and hear and watch on television and read on the internet, just like all of you. And I've probably taken in less than most of you because I try to lead a balanced life when it comes to the news cycle. I don't need to get immersed and negative and downtrodden. I just need to get information of how myself and my family need to conduct ourselves, but we do so without fear and without panic. No fear, no panic, but be wise and do the smart things. But as this relates to college football, Dabo Swinney made the comment the other day that basically he was very optimistic and almost guaranteed a college football season. Now, I think that's kind of foolish of him to do, but on the other hand, he's got every right to cite his opinion. It's the fault of the listeners, us, in stating that, either getting offended that he's going to go out there and state that without knowing that he really knows what he's talking about, or other people take it as gospel truth because Dabo Swinney said that there's going to be a college football season. There's going to be a college football season. Well, neither one should be the way we approach it. Let the man speak. Let him give his opinion. Let him be hopeful and optimistic. I think all those things are great. But let's also understand he's an expert at football, not at the medical situation. So he's just talking. He's just stating his optimism and trying to give it another perspective because everything seems to be so negative. Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State head coach, commented the other day, And he was taken to task by social media and also by the university because he said, hey, let's get this thing going, and gave a number of logical reasons as to why he felt as though Oklahoma State, their university, their football program, is capable of taking this on and getting back to work. So it wasn't just a nonsensical, irresponsible comment that Mike Gundy was making, but at the same time, he was not thinking about the totality of everything, and he doesn't run the ship for collegiate football. So he's just talking. All right, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Kevin. You got me?
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, we got you. How are you?
Hey, Mark. Hey, good, man. It's been a while since I called. Hey, yeah, thanks for getting me on. I'm glad you're doing the stream tonight. I'm glad I caught it.
Absolutely.
Kind of piggyback off what you're saying. For one, if you listen to Kirk Herbstreit, one thing he did say, he was worried about, if we don't have a vaccine by then, that was one of the major factors that would lead to college football possibly being canceled. That was like a month ago when Kirk Herbstreit said this, or at least 2 or 3 weeks ago, and a whole lot's changed. And I don't want to get into politics and really talk about this. We're here to talk about college football specifically, but I will say I think there will be college football. I think what will happen is we'll probably do something more like what Sweden's doing with like a vertical quarantine, where once we get into June and July, things are start going back to normal. Colleges will open up for fall semester in August, and this stuff is going to be getting back to normal with the exception of maybe some hot spots or in particular people who are susceptible. They will stay quarantined. But anyways, my question to you, Mark, with all this going on, with no spring ball or very little, with no summer workouts as we know it so far, who do you think should be more affected by this? Is it going to be the good teams like the Clemsons and Alabamas? Do you think some of the maybe unknown teams or kind of sleeper teams for the upcoming season would maybe have an advantage? Because sometimes if you are like a Clemson and Alabama, being at the top of that pedestal means you got to maintain that consistency, that off-season schedule. Dabo Swinney talks about it a lot. You got to maintain that routine, get back into the flow, restart, start all over, redo your fundamentals. But some of these sleeper teams, maybe they come in with a little bit more motivation. They think they can take down the Giants. That extra passion, that extra motivation to kind of cause some upsets in the college football rankings and everything, certainly can come into play. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on who do you think might be more affected, for good or worse.
So this is a bit of a stab in the dark, but I'm thinking of this completely opposite. So let's put myself up against a math genius and throw up this incredible, impossible math problem on the board and say, you each have 2 hours to solve this problem, okay? And then let's take a different scenario in which we put up the same problem on the board and myself and a math genius and then say, you've got 5 minutes to solve this problem. I think you've actually increased his ability to make me look foolish in the time allotted, meaning that even though Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, the great coaches, the great programs, they are perfectionists and they are hyper-focused to every detail. So yes, this upsets their off-season program, their schedule, and they are so internal in their thought that they're thinking about how this messes them up. But I compare them to everybody else out there, and I think that if you take the genius, that if you take the guy that knows exactly how to run the program and has it buttoned down to the point that they do, and then you condense the time, that their genius is magnified, that they have an even greater advantage over the field. That's just a theory, if you understand my line of thinking here.
No, I think so. I think it's almost like, if all teams are on the same playing field, some teams are better than others. They all are losing the same amount of time. all teams are being affected. But my thought process is over the last couple of weeks has been, some of these teams, towards the bottom of the top 25, or you could go down to the bottom to the top 30, 35. There's some good teams that they're not coming in with a lot of expectations. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is I think you have an Alabama, you have a Clemson, you have a lot of these top tier programs. They're coming in with so much expectations, and now how are they going to respond? And it's not just replacing quarterbacks or running backs or wide receivers or D linemen or linebackers. You're replacing the entire team has to now kind of start over in a sense. And kind of rebound from this, whereas some of these other schools don't have that expectation and added burden. So it kind of, they feel now like, oh, you know what? I think we got a better chance now. I think we can come into this season, since they're hurting just like we're hurting. We don't have those expectations. They come in a little bit more motivated. I don't know. I expect to see a few upsets early on in the college football season. And I wonder how, when we look back at the end of 2020, assuming we have college football, which I'm sure we will, I wonder if we look back and see how many upsets happened because some of these great teams probably lost early on in the first few weeks.
So it's a great point, Kevin. I can appreciate that as well, because the other thought, kind of opposite the one that I gave, is that the Nick Sabans of the world, and there's very few, certainly take advantage of bowl practice and the gap of time between the last regular season game or the conference championship games and the bowl game or the college football playoff. And typically it's the thought that those great coaches are better able to take that 6 weeks of preparation and maximize it. That's why Urban Meyer and Nick Saban and some other coaches, but those two guys in particular, have amazing postseason records, is because they're able to take the extra time and maximize it and use it to their advantage. So I get that point as well. And therefore, in this situation with limited or condensed time, that it will give an opportunity for some underdogs to pull some surprises, because those better teams with the better talent won't have it ironed out. But again, I still am going to stay with my perspective that the genius coaches in the condensed period of time will know how to utilize that time better than the other guys. And they also have the better talent just to play. Less time creates situations in which you are not able to scheme as complex of strategies on both sides of the football.
Talent can overcome that.
So talent can overcome that
lack of time.
So here's a few other thoughts.
Okay.
A few other thoughts would be, what teams have a new head coach? So those teams are at a huge disadvantage. Florida State in particular. Mike Norvell at Florida State did not have any offseason other than some workout time, some meeting time with his team to install his structure, his organization, his terminology. The position coaches that he brought in that are new from Memphis to Florida State have not had the chance to build relationships in person with their players. That the new head coaches, who largely bring in new head coaching staffs, they're at a huge disadvantage. And then to a lesser extent, a situation like Miami, where they do still have the same defensive coordinator, same head coach, but a new offensive coordinator, and are installing a new offense, that is going to be difficult. And then here's my third theory along those same lines, is that if you look at the roster makeup of any particular team, and if it's heavy toward inexperienced sophomores and freshmen, that will be more difficult because they're still learning the system, versus a senior, junior, heavy laden roster is better equipped because they've been on campus, they've been on the system for 3 or 4 years, and they're going to be better equipped in a short, condensed period of time to just pick up where they are more comfortable, since they've been with the team and been with that program for 3 to 4 years. So we would have to
Right
do
on.
a rundown of every team's makeup of freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors to see. And again, that's just a theory that the more senior the team, the more that they would be prepared to deal with this.
Oh yeah, I understand and I agree. I completely agree. All right, hey, last question. I'll let you go. I know you probably got more callers, man. Real quick, I'm at the Clemson fan. I'm just curious. Do you think maybe Travis Etienne is regretting his decision not to leave for the NFL?
Oh boy.
Or maybe this applies to a lot of juniors out there, who maybe decide to come back for another year of college, who could have left to go to the NFL. Do you think any of them are regretting this? Do you think this they're looking back like, man, I thought this was going to be a year where the off season was going to do me wonders and go into the next year and really show off and get a high draft grade for the next year. But now with all this happening, think there's any major regret?
Well, again, you can look at it two ways. The major regret is easy to see because the college season is going to be compromised and they could have just bypassed it. And obviously he was in line to be a fairly high draft pick. But on the other hand, look at the hurried nature of the NFL draft and the way the evaluations are compromised because of all this season versus if there's some semblance of a normal college football season, he'll be able to play through that and then go through the normal process of an NFL draft off season leading into the NFL draft next year. So I can see your perspective. I certainly buy into that. But I can also see where in the long run, maybe a year from now, having gone through the off season in a normal way, hopefully next year will serve him better and players like him rather than what he would have experienced going into the NFL this year. So you can
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I didn't even think about that actually. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Well, hey, awesome. I'll get off the phone. Hey, appreciate it, Mark. You're doing great work, man. Keep it up. Thank you.
Kevin.
God bless.
I appreciate it. And speaking of Travis Etienne, we posted a video a few weeks ago because it hit me after Travis Etienne made his announcement that he was coming back to college football. And so this is more than a few weeks ago. Anyway, here in the last couple months, I posted a video because it hit me after really looking at the lists of rushing and touchdown scores in the history of college football, that if Travis Etienne just posts an average season, 1,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, that he will rank easily in the top 10 in the history of college football in both rushing and touchdowns scored. He will be the third leading touchdown scorer, rushing touchdown score in the history of college football with an average season. And he will be top 7 to 8 in rushing yardage in history with an average season. Again, wanted to let you guys know that we are covering the NFL draft. You will see those videos posted here in the next few days. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and offensive linemen are coming. Also, the defensive side of the ball. We're setting up a live stream with Rick Saratella from the NFL Draft Bible again this week. That's why it's important to subscribe to the channel. Then you turn on the bell, you get the notifications, and you know when we're going live. It appears as though we are set to go live on Monday night at 6 o'clock to talk Notre Dame football at 6 Eastern time. And then, of course, our Tuesday night Florida State live stream at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I came up with a few ideas here just the last few hours. So I enjoyed dinner with my kids this afternoon. Well, we got a call coming in. So I hope again that everybody was able to celebrate Easter today with your loved ones. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, McD. Happy Easter.
Well, first, happy Easter to you and your family. Hope all is doing well.
We are. Thank you.
I want to call for 2 reasons. The first reason is just to hit back on the some of these coaches getting condemned. Like I know Dabo is. I know Mike Gundy issued like a apology or something for what he said. I don't think they're wrong, because this is what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to delay the season by a whole month, not start until October, but you're going to still get the full season.
Okay, that seems reasonable. I think it's just a guess, though. We're all just guessing. McD, I believe, do you have me tuned up in the background?
Excuse me?
Do you have my audio up in the background?
No.
Okay, just checking, because there's kind of like a squeal when I talk coming over your phone. All right, so basically you're saying that you believe that there will be a full college football season, but it won't kick off until October.
Correct. And the reason why I think that is because I think they just want to give them a little bit more time, and basically maybe give them an extra 30 days so that they can have fans in the stands.
So they're going to come back in October with fans in the stands?
I think so.
Okay. I think that my conversation, either the last one or the first one of the night, the one other thing I was going to mention is one of the big issues here is that the severity across the country is obviously uneven. So we can't have a situation in which I was able to go to camp on time at the end of July, but Rutgers, of course, just a few miles outside of New York City, is not. That creates an unfair playing field. So there has to be some reasonable discussion there. There's a Major League Baseball plan being discussed in which everybody would be shipped to Arizona, put in quarantine between being at the ballpark, on the buses, and the hotels, and the entire Major League Baseball season would be played in Arizona at various fields that are close to each other without fans. But college football wouldn't be able to do that. Send every school in the FBS to South Dakota and go play a college football season. That can't happen. So I don't see fans in the stands early on, and I'm just guessing.
That's good enough. I think, and personally, like the one caller said, I think your last caller, I think it's all going to be gone by June probably, and it's probably just going to, and I think they're just going to give the extra month so they can have fans in the stands in week one, honestly, and also for this hotbed areas, because I was in one of the hotbed areas, and just to give them like a bit of a bit more time so that they can have a fair advantage, like Rutgers, Maryland, LSU. That's what I think is going to happen, but it's just a guess. And Mark, that screaming noise you're hearing, I live way up way up the street from a fire station. It was one of those fire trucks just going off somewhere. But the second thing I want to talk to you about is that college football conference realignment video.
Yes.
I like a lot of things that your guest is saying, but I disagree with 2 points of his.
Okay.
I want to get your thoughts on it. I disagree with him paying Notre Dame in like the Big East, or I forgot what he called it. I just referred to it as the Big East. I think Notre Dame should go in the ACC, and I don't think South Carolina should go in the ACC.
So again, you're okay with a Big East conference, but just don't include Notre Dame, and South Carolina should stay in the SEC and not go to the ACC. Those are your two biggest complaints.
Correct.
All right.
I think in the Big 12, I think they should. I would say add Colorado. I would say add Texas A&M and Missouri. Those two teams leave the SEC. at Colorado and replace them and replace Colorado with Boise State in the Pac-12.
All right. So what McD is alluding to, everyone, is that I had a conversation with Ryan Cantor from Shaking the Southland, and he unveiled his conference realignment plan. So McD, I'll let you know that even though I'm going to comment to what you had to say, that in the next several days, my realignment is going to be unveiled. So I cut videos about 3 or 4 years ago on this, and I basically have dusted those off. And my conference realignment is going to be unveiled conference by conference this week.
Okay.
They're coming.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
So I've got 6 conferences, and here they come.
So, I mean, and I agree with the 6 conferences, 12 teams each will. My only concern, and even if in Ryan's scenario, if Notre Dame was in it, my only concern would be in that Big East conference. I think he called it something else. I'm just calling it the Big East. That conference will not be looked at as lightly. I mean, as heavily as other conferences. Like, I think the SEC and the Big Ten would trump that conference personally. That's my only concern, even if with Notre Dame in it.
So when I talked to Ryan about this before we started to record, I told him the same thing. I said that Eastern Conference is not good enough. And that's a spoiler alert to a certain extent concerning my videos. Because the issue is that if you try to keep the conferences geographically grounded and based, obviously college football in the Northeast isn't nearly as strong as it is in other parts of the country, namely the Southeast and the Midwest. So you've got an automatic issue there. If you're going to make a Northeast conference, what do you got? Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt. It's difficult to put together a conference geographically.
Yeah, and that was like my one big that was like my one big concern. Even with Notre Dame with it, I just don't think it's that strong, because I think people would just look at that conference and if it's in real life and just sit there and be like, oh, well, you're not going to rank a team inside the top 5 in that conference. And then today's playoff alignment, with only 4 teams, they'll never get into the playoffs, in my opinion. Now, in the 8-team playoff, I think they would, but not every year. That was my big issue with that. Okay.
Well, I can anticipate your first comment to my videos.
And one other quick thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's huge, the conference realignment, because I think you're going to see some major conference realignment this decade with all the TV contracts. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I think the Big 12 has to make a play for the Arizona schools and try to get Colorado back for them to be sustainable, and maybe even Memphis. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But that's all I have, Mark, for you tonight. Thanks for taking my call. Go Terps for getting Caleb Williams.
Thanks, McD. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, 42 on the line. Thanks so much for joining us. I have basically been hit with a few different topics that I thought would be interesting debate topics. Okay, there was a tweet sent out here in the last few days concerning Clemson's dominance over Ohio State. Hang on. Let me get to you. I'm trying to get the speaker on. There we go. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Yassine. Rode a boat, Mark.
Yeah, who's on the line? I'm sorry.
Yak. Rode a boat.
Rode the boat. Yeah. How's it going?
Anyway, my question is,
Ten West next year, do you have any favorites or any surprise teams, in your opinion?
I have not necessarily broken down the personnel in the Big Ten West. I think the Big Ten West is fascinating. It's, in some respects, my favorite division in college football. It has gone from a division in which people were complaining a couple of years ago about it being boring. I was not one of those people, but people complaining about being boring. And now you've got Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa are legit strong programs. Nebraska still hasn't shown us, but still obviously is the hope of joining the mix. Jeff Brom, I still think, is doing good things at Purdue, even though they had a step back last season at 4-8. Northwestern's only one season removed from winning the Big Ten at 8-1, winning the Big Ten Western Division, even though they took a step back. So I think it's a fascinating division. The balance in the division is better than in any division in college football. And it's not mediocre balance. It's become good, close to top end, not elite, but top end balance. You've got three programs that are legit top 15 to 20 programs in the country in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. So you're obviously focused on Minnesota. So what PJ Fleck has done and is continuing to do there is just short of amazing. I know that they've only, and I will caution Gopher fans of getting a little bit too high off of 11-2. Don't assume that that's going to be the new standard. It's going to be difficult to maintain. But with Tanner Morgan back at quarterback, Rashad Bateman at wide receiver, you bring back most of your offensive line. Of course, you lose some tremendous talent in Tyler Johnson and Antoine Winfield, but the recruiting is better than it's been in forever at Minnesota. Wisconsin's going to take a step back, I would think, from what they did last year. And Iowa needs to replace Nathan Stanley at quarterback, one of the best left tackles in college football, and Tristan Wirfs. It's going to be a fascinating race. I'm not going to project it right now. I did cut a Minnesota video with a record projection and schedule preview that I posted last week and put you at 9-3. I think it's a fascinating division. It's my favorite division in college football.
Also, Mark, comparing the Big Ten East and the Big Ten West, obviously Ohio State's the best team, but which division do you think is stronger top to bottom?
So this debate was no debate going into last season. As soon as these divisions were comprised, once they tore down the legends and the leaders and made it East and West, I thought it made total sense. It's obviously based on geography, East and West. But the Eastern Division was obviously the tougher division, and it would be thought by most college football fans that that's not going to change. But if you really look at it, I think there's a case to be made for the Big Ten Western Division being much more balanced, no question, but also strong in those second, third, fourth, fifth places where the Big Ten Eastern Division, with Michigan State faltering, is now becoming a three-team division. Well, really a one-team division, and we'll see about Penn State and Michigan. So who has the better division? Well, let's see. It's almost impossible to rank the Big Ten West. Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, 1, 2, and 3, 3, 2, and 1. They're the three best schools right now. Nebraska is a serious wild card. I think Purdue's going to be better this year. Northwestern's going to be dramatically better, probably more like a 6-win team instead of a 3-win team. And Illinois is no longer an awful team, whereas Rutgers still is atrocious, and Maryland was last year. It's a great argument. The Big Ten East has the best team and maybe the second best team, but the Big Ten West depth has surpassed the Big Ten East.
Also, last question. What do you think about Rutgers and Maryland's recruiting recently? Do you think they can eventually catch up to like the Penn State and Michigan in the future?
Rutgers and Maryland?
Yeah, they're doing pretty good recently.
Rutgers and Maryland have not done anything in their recent football histories, and I'm talking about 30 years, to show me that they can play with Penn State and Michigan.
Well, the geographical region, they start like Loxley and Shiano start locking out their states. The DMV area and Cherokee, there's a lot of talent.
Oh, you're absolutely.
They have like that building.
No, you make a great point. From a recruiting standpoint, they should be able to compete. They have enough talent in that region, in the Atlantic region, the DMV, New Jersey, to be able to compete with Penn State and especially Michigan. If you just go by recruiting footprint, Michigan and Michigan State should be in trouble because they don't have the recruiting, they don't have the talent in state to compete with Penn State and the two schools you just mentioned, Rutgers and Maryland. But obviously Michigan can go other places and get talent. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Mike Loxley. I do in Greg Schiano, but not in Mike Loxley to run a football program. He's going to have to change my mind because I don't see it based on what he did at New Mexico and what he's doing at Maryland. But you're right. They've got the recruiting pipeline to be able to do it.
I was just thinking Cam in to win Maryland. Yeah, thank you.
Well, we appreciate the call. I had some trouble hearing that call, but so I didn't even still get his handle. But big Minnesota fan. All right, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. So a couple debate topics that came to mind. So one of our good friends likes to brag about the Clemson 4-for-4 against Ohio State, and rightfully so. Clemson fans, go at it. Just go out there on social media and bow your chest and talk about 4-0 against Ohio State. Absolutely. Trash talking is part of the whole deal. If you feel good about yourselves talking about 4-0, just out of nowhere, it's not even though it's a discussion point, just out of nowhere, you make it a discussion point, sure, have at it. And I will finish my thought after this call. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Chris. How you doing? Have a good Easter?
Hey, Chris, I did. I had a great Easter. How about you?
It's pretty good, man.
Cool.
Pretty good. Family here, and we had dinner and everything. It was
awesome.
Cool. I'm glad you came on tonight. There was a couple of things I've been wanting to talk to you about. This week, seems like there was a lot of talk about two things: conference realignment, and also I heard two sources, like Mike Greenberg in the morning, and then it was Josh Pate from 247. We're discussing possible moves from the Power 5 to separate themselves from the NCAA. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything substantial. It's been talked about in the past. I'll have to look into that. The Power 5 separating itself from the NCAA. So, yeah, there's enough power, there's enough money in those conferences themselves to separate themselves. This could have been done at any time.
Now, if they made a move like that, would they be out in all sports, or is this just football? Like, would they be part of the, March Madness and things like that?
Well, that's a great question. It depends what the NCAA would force them to do. So if the Power 5 said, we want to separate ourselves in football and make our own decisions, investigate ourselves, police ourselves, do all the things that the NCAA already does, but we just want to do that for football, then the ball would be in the NCAA's court to say, go right ahead and do that. We'll continue to police you and investigate and do all the things that we do in structuring the rest of the sports. Or the NCAA could say, it's an all or nothing deal. Either you take on football and everything else, or we're not doing anything. Do you follow me? So the Power Five conferences can make this move, but then it's up to the NCAA to counter that. It's almost like when Notre Dame decided that it wanted to join the ACC in all sports but football, then the decision went to the ACC to either accept that or to say, no, you're not joining the ACC unless you join us in all sports, including football. And we saw what the ACC decided. Now, the NCAA could decide the same thing and say, yeah, we still want to have jurisdiction in men's and women's basketball, baseball, swimming, on down the line, all the other sports, and especially the revenue sports, which are men's basketball number one, then probably women's basketball or baseball. But we've lost control of football. You can take it over. That would be up to the NCAA to decide.
So if something like that were to occur, so does that mean that that's the end of games between, Power 5 and non-Power 5 schools?
It would all depend on whether they it would all depend on what is the motivation and the purpose of the Power 5 conferences disbanding from the NCAA. Is it for them to just sanction themselves off and create their own league in which they don't participate against those other schools? I don't think that would be the purpose of that. I think most of the Power 5 conferences, I think they take value in playing the group of five, and they take value of playing FCS schools in which they pay them to come to their stadiums and play so that they can keep those football programs afloat financially.
Yeah, I thought since I heard the one on ESPN and the other guy from 247 talking about it, I didn't know if there was rumblings about it. I know everybody's been talking about, the new TV contract and the leagues possibly, picking up teams and expanding. And I always assumed that was done to, bargain better with the networks to get more money, for their schools or for the conference overall. So, I hear a lot of people talking about, the Big Ten possibly picking up some teams. I forget who I hear people want the most. I know Notre Dame has been mentioned and things like that. And what I was thinking, there are a lot of teams, like, for example, Rutgers, talk about. I don't really know if, for example, people in the Big Ten really care about that program. They're pretty new. I know they joined in the last go around, and they haven't really done anything for you guys. If push word, if something came out, would it be better to, in your opinion, to drop a team like that, or if that's even possible, and pick up a Notre Dame without expanding?
Well, here's the situation with the Big Ten and its addition of Rutgers and Maryland. Football drives all these decisions. Well, really, money drives it, but football drives the money. And for as big as the NCAA men's basketball tournament is, and men's basketball in general, it pales in comparison to football. It's not even close. So football drives everything, generally. So the addition of Maryland and Rutgers from a football playing standpoint made no sense for the Big Ten. But the Big Ten made that decision based on population areas. They wanted to get into the New York, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore markets, the television markets, and those fan bases, because there's a lot of people on the East Coast in that corridor. What the Big Ten didn't take into consideration is think about the way people consume media right now in 2020 versus the way they did in 2014 when that deal was struck, and the makings of that deal went back 3 and 4 years before that. So go back to 2011, 2012 versus 2020. In 2011 and 2012, the Big Ten was thinking cable television, cable TV markets. Washington, D.C., Baltimore, New York, that's huge. We want those cable TV homes. Well, fast forward 6 to 8 years, and cable television isn't nearly as powerful as it was then. It's still a powerful brand and something to be considered, but most people are doing exactly what we're doing right this second. They get most of their media through the internet and digital media. So that consideration that the Big Ten made was a bit and has become quickly outdated. The reasoning behind that move. It hasn't been a move that's been disastrous by any stretch of the imagination, but it hasn't benefited the league to the point that they thought it would, because as you mentioned, people in those markets, for the most part, don't care about Rutgers and Maryland football and athletics. Number one, those are pro sports towns. They care about professional sports, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NFL, first and foremost. And number two, the college ties to those cities are based on the alumni ties to those cities. And most of the Big Ten ties in those cities are Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and then Notre Dame. Those are, if you took a poll of college football allegiance on the East Coast, it would go to Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame before anybody else, not Maryland and Rutgers. Maryland has a bit of a football history and some ties to Maryland and some popularity. But again, that Big Ten decision was based on money from cable TV homes, and that isn't nearly as important today as it was 7 or 8 years ago because of digital media and the internet.
Yeah, I think this go around is going to be really interesting. I hear so much noise about either the Big 12 being dissolved or, and Oklahoma and Texas leaving. I mean, I hear people saying, one of them may go to the SEC and one to the Big Ten. And I don't know what would happen. I guess I don't know what would happen to all those member teams. And the other thing, BYU, I just feel like they should join the Pac-12. And, I don't know who else they could add to make it even. But
Boise State.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, BYU and Boise. That would be good for their market. But I feel like they need a name brand out there as well. I kind of feel. I know if Notre Dame ends up going to the Big Ten, I would feel as though that conference is better than the SEC.
I think Notre Dame should be in the Big Ten. Again, I'm going to roll out some videos here in the next week or so that is going to go through my conference alignment. And somebody noted in the live chat that if I release those videos, they want me to take into consideration politics and academics. I didn't do that. I don't have time to research the academic standing of these various universities and all of that, and the other things that come into play. Like for the Big Ten to allow Nebraska to join the Big Ten, Nebraska had to become, and some people in the live chat may be a little bit more familiar with the terminology here, but Nebraska had to receive and earn a certain accreditation academically to join the Big Ten. I'm not going to go into all those theatrics to figure it out. I went from strictly a football standpoint of the way I believe college football should look. What makes sense from a football standpoint?
Yeah, I think from the football standpoint, you got the SEC and the Big Ten and everybody else. I mean, honestly, I kind of like Oklahoma and Texas leaving. I feel like all of the rest of the people, everybody else in the Big 12 is it's like they're like G5 teams. I don't know where they would go.
G5 teams from the standpoint of how they compete on the field. I think that's a bit of a put down.
No, they're good. They're good. They're good teams. I don't mean it, to be disparaging, but I mean, as far as name brands like TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, I don't really feel like they're Power 5 teams in my head. Like, I don't think Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, even Michigan State. Like, I kind of feel like they don't feel that way to me. Like, even for example, like for me, if they realigned everything, I would be okay with them decreasing the number of Power 5 teams.
Well, one of the things that the Power 5 could do, if it goes through with what you brought to the table to start the conversation, that they would just sanction off from the NCAA and make their own decisions, is that they could all get together and then figure out, instead of what has happened in the past, is obviously every man is for himself. Every league is for itself. And they just go out there and drop teams and add teams based on money and football prestige. And therefore, you've got this just kind of awkward grabbing of teams, and then teams and conferences look like they're ready to dissolve. So they got to go grab some other teams to make up for the teams that left their league. And it's all haphazardly done. And each league is just looking out for its own interests. What they could do under your situation that you proposed, that's a possibility, is that the 5 conference commissioners and their committees could all get together and say, what is going to be best for all of us? And then they could figure out what the conference alignments should look like as a whole and figure it out. That would be the one advantage of that happening.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I just kind of feel like there's too many teams really in the Power 5 right now. Most of them aren't really, like, Rutgers is never going to win the Big Ten. I mean, I don't think Greg Schiano, Arkansas is going to be.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know what that would take to happen. Like, Kentucky is never going to win the SEC. Vanderbilt. I mean, why not drop these teams who, condense some of these leagues? So even if they did it, where some more of these games on Saturday are between big teams that, can actually do something, and, let those teams drop down. They can make a Group of 5 division, and at least those fan bases will have something to root for. They could possibly win a Group of 5 championship. So,
well, you got to understand there's a level of prestige in playing big time football. So there are a number of Division III schools, for example, that lose all sorts of money playing football. Division II schools lose money playing football, but they don't want to give up football because it sends a certain message to those students who are looking at that school to go attend there. So it's the same thing in play for a Rutgers, for example, if we're going to use Rutgers, and we use Rutgers because of their lack of competitiveness on the field, not necessarily that they would be the first candidate to be kicked out of the Power 5 monetarily. Financially, they're doing much better than other programs. But they don't want to go down to, they know in their heart of hearts, they have no chance in the Big Ten Eastern Division. But they don't want to be downgraded to a Group of 5 program because the stigma that would place on the university in just being a name brand as an institution versus being a member of the Big Ten, they don't want to take that hit. They don't want to be downgraded to a Group of 5 school in football.
Yeah, no, I get it. I wouldn't want to be downgraded either, but if they were in the Group of 5, they wouldn't even be a good Group of 5 team. So I kind of feel like, I mean, I guess, you wouldn't, I guess Power 5 teams need a break. So if they want to have a couple of teams in each league that, basically you're kind of taking a week off when you play them, that would be it. But other than that, I don't know what attendance is like
for Rutgers games, or they weren't Power 5 before they joined the Big Ten last time, were they?
Rutgers?
Yeah, were they Power 5 before they joined the Big Ten?
They were in the Big East. Yes, the Big East was part of the Bowl Championship Series. Yes.
Okay.
So the winner of the Big East would go to the Bowl Championship Series and play in a major bowl game.
I get it. It's prestigious to be part of a league, but you're not doing anything in that league. So it's, I guess, if I don't know how as a student how fun it would be to go get beat up by Ohio State and Penn State, every year. I mean, maybe I don't know. I look at what Boise did. I think they've run a good program for quite a long time. There's Houston. There's other G5 schools that Cincinnati. They run good programs. I think that they're fine. I just feel like it would be. I'd rather see somebody else on that schedule. I'm not in that region, so I can't go to the games, but I would rather see something else on Saturday from that TV package if I was in the Big Ten, just playing somebody else. I don't know who you guys could pick up. Because that's the other thing. You got to share money with these teams. And if you could bring in a Notre Dame, I'm sure they would pay more money to everybody else who's left behind, and dropping a Rutgers and just basically paying Rutgers a pity check.
I gotcha. All right. I'm going to take another call here. We've got some other ones coming in. I appreciate the phone call, sir.
All right, Mark.
Have a good one, man.
All right.
They dropped off. Whomever was calling me, there were a couple calls there. Please just call back. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I hope that you guys understand what we're trying to build here. We're trying to build the best source of college football discussion, debate, and analysis. Do we hit that mark all the time? No, of course we don't. I'm one guy. I'm just one guy. But we bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers that we can find. And, of course, you get analysis from myself. And you're going to see a whole lot of analysis coming up very soon. NFL draft, position breakdowns around college football. Somebody asked me in the comment section, David Greenshield, to name the best quarterback of the SEC. I will address that comment in just a minute, but also understand that I'm rolling out a video series in which I will be ranking the top 5 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and other positions across college football in the various Power 5 conferences. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? George, it's tough to hear you. How's it going?
I gotta hold on, I'm gonna take you off my stereo. Okay, hold on. Is that better?
That might be a little bit better.
All right, so let me unplug the speaker. Okay, that's better.
How are you doing this fine day?
Oh man, it's Easter. I'm rocking.
It is Easter.
Yeah, I actually went outside today. I took some trash to the dumpster and then I came back in. Big day.
Oh, big day outside. You're quite the outdoorsman.
Yeah. I had like 7 minutes of sunshine. I walked real slow back, coming back.
You soaked it in. It's good to know.
Twice today I snuck outside. Well, once when I took the trash out and the other time. And I made chicken soup yesterday. It was a massive chicken, huge chicken. I had so much waste, bones, and, everything from the chicken when I made soup. And I fed it to the crows and I watched them all. They're like a family, a murder of crows. It's so enjoyable to watch them have fun off my waste, I feed them good shit, though, like roast beef and chicken. They love me, man. They would protect me, I'm sure.
They would protect you.
They don't shit on my car. I know that.
Some of the local birds there, you're looking for protection from the local wildlife.
It's called a murder of crows. That's what you call a family of crows, a murder of crows. That's literally like a flock or whatever you call it, a herd.
Right.
When it's crows, the word's a murder. They made a movie about that once.
what I do sometimes, George, when you come on here and you start kind of running amok with some of these conversations, I just watch the viewer total in the corner just to keep an eye on that, just to make sure.
If it drops below like 27, just hang up.
27. I'm at 45 right now. I'm not going to lose half the
I'll
audience.
hang up. If 300 people hang up, drop me.
Well, we need to get at least 300 people on these live streams. If I stay consistent with this live stream every Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time, I would hope that we can build this.
Well, especially now.
So what's on your mind these days?
Well, it's kind of like fantasy football now. I'm so detached at this point. I hear what all these people are saying about conference affiliations and shit. But do you think the SEC really wants another team like Oklahoma or Texas or anybody? I mean, we already have it tough enough as it is. We don't need it. All we have to do is win our schedule as it is. We don't need to tighten up at all. Florida does. When we do out of state, we're playing Colorado State or Utah or somebody dumb. Nobody needs any more. We got enough as it is. The other people don't have the teams to play. Miami don't have no one to play. Look, Ohio State has some people to play. We have some people to play. Clemson has a little problem, but it doesn't stop them from winning a national title. Why would I want to make my schedule more difficult?
So what you're saying, George, makes complete sense. But if that happened, if Oklahoma and Texas are leaving the Big 12 to go to other conferences and the SEC would be that much tougher, you got to realize that the whole map would change dramatically. We're talking about if teams are going to be added to the SEC in particular, then what you're going to see are 16-team conferences. So this was talked about like 10 years ago when Nebraska left and Colorado moved and all these teams started to move around, Texas A&M and Missouri, that we may get to a point where we have 16-team conferences. Now, if that's the case, you will see the Texases of the world leave and join the SEC, and you'll see these just mammoth conferences, and the other conferences will be made more difficult as well, not just the SEC.
Yeah. I guess it's unsustainable the way it is. There's too many conferences, not enough good teams. It sucks. I miss the good old days. I like it when winning the Cotton Bowl was the highlight of your year, or winning the Gator Bowl, or winning the Orange Bowl, or winning the Rose Bowl. And you were satisfied. You didn't have to win the national title that was voted on. But, now it's like one team and fuck everybody else. That's just not fair. Because everything's not equal, It's not equal.
Well, it never has been.
I feel sorry for the lesser teams. I mean, right now everyone's jumping on Rutgers. Rutgers is a great team as far as I'm concerned traditionally. I mean, they don't have to be on top every year, but we're comparing them to these mega teams, and it's just not right. They're gritty. They're tough. They have good days. They beat somebody.
Well, the thing we have to understand, George, is that this is competitive athletics. Therefore, every time there's a game played, there's going to be a winner and a loser. Therefore, there's always going to be teams that are considered or programs that are crappy teams. Otherwise, there aren't games being played on the field. Somebody's going to lose the games.
Right.
So
That's why I
be bad teams. You can't get rid of bad teams. That doesn't exist.
Right to be in the SEC forever.
If we chop college football down to 10 teams, understand this, and I'm sure you do. If we chopped college football down to 10 teams, let's say we only had 10 teams in the whole country, there would suddenly be crappy teams. Those crappy teams might be Oklahoma and Oregon, but they would be crappy teams. Somebody's got to lose the games.
Right. You know what? I don't like suck-ass games, but I can't see a schedule being the first game you play Florida State, then you play Miami, then you play Alabama, then you play Auburn, then you play LSU, then you play Georgia, then you play Florida, then you play Texas, then you play USC. That ain't going to work. People will die. You can't do that.
It's a little tough, yeah.
You can't do that. You have to give Appalachian State a chance to beat Michigan.
I agree. I enjoy those games.
Florida lost to fucking some suck-ass team a few years ago. Someone not even in our conference type rating thing. I mean, everybody did it. Troy beat LSU a couple years ago. That's good. We got to keep that in there. Got to give them a chance. Troy beat LSU.
They did. Appalachian State beat Michigan. Georgia
Detroit.
Southern beat.
My dad took us to Detroit
Yes,
for a game.
Georgia State beat Tennessee. Georgia Southern beat Florida. It happens.
It was Georgia Southern. Oh my God. Oh fuck. Hard to believe Georgia Southern beat Florida. Appalachian State's the one that sticks out in my mind. Beat Michigan. I wasn't expecting that week. I was like, what the? I wish I could know these games ahead of time so I could make some money.
Well, that's the dilemma for all of us, George. If we all knew what was going to happen in the future, then we would all be rich.
Vegas is shut down.
Everything's shut down, George. Of course, Vegas is shut down.
Hey, if everybody wants to move to Oregon and buy the 150 houses surrounding me, I'll tell you what to do. I know what to do, but I first I got to have some support. So I need to be in the middle of 150 of my best friends.
Are you telling me that if I bought some real estate in Oregon, that would be a good investment right now?
No, I'll move to where you're at. I changed my mind. Where are you?
I'm in Connecticut, George. You would have to come all the way across the country.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. I think both of the coasts have been sold already. I don't know where to go, quite frankly. Guatemala, maybe. I had a nice chance to marry a Guatemalan girl once. I wish I would have done that.
Okay. Did you make that proposal?
Her name was Anna. No, I was
Anna.
I was young. I wasn't quite ready to commit. But now, later in life, when I think about it, oh, fuck.
All right, George. We're throwing the F word around a little too much here.
I figured out how to...
Did you hear me,
I figured
George?
out how to... Huh?
All right.
Say it again. Say it again.
I'm saying that we are throwing the F word around too much.
No. I was spelling it with a PH. I won't do that no more. I'm sorry. You can't tell over the air. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's PH. PHUC. It's a Vietnamese word.
All right, George. What's our next topic? Is there one?
I figured out how to do a super chat, and I realized YouTube's taking half the money, but I don't care. It's been like 2 years, and I finally figured out how to do it. I've done like 10 of them or 6 of them with you, and 3 or 4 with Pete.
You've done them with
the
me.
Most fun you can have.
You've given me super chats? I haven't seen these, George.
Wow. I'm going to check my credit card because it shows up. I can see it on the screen on my video. It says super chat in my statement.
We've got one coming in from Noah Thompson. Noah Thompson, thank you so much for the contribution of 99 cents. Thank you, Noah. I appreciate it. I've never seen your handle before, but certainly welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So, Noah, we will give you a shout out. I just did, of course, but I will also post your comment, your super sticker comment to the screen.
What did he say?
He said super sticker. I don't know what that means, but it's a 99-cent super sticker is what Noah has given us
I haven't
tonight.
done that one yet. Hey, listen, if you go back and look through your whole night show, I've done like 4 $2 super chats, and I don't care.
You
have? The money and
none of them are showing up.
Yeah.
None. I'm looking through the whole thing. See, when somebody gives a super chat, it pops up at the top of my screen here. And the only one coming through is Noah Thompson.
You know what? A lot of my shit that I said been about the coronavirus. Maybe it's politically incorrect, and maybe I got knocked down. But I'm going to check my debit card and see if that shit came off my card.
Please do that.
You know, because I can see it on my phone. It's there. It says it's paid. Took money.
I'm sorry about that, George. I apologize. I'm sorry for that, George, because I certainly am greatly indebted to anyone who gives to the super chat, and certainly want to acknowledge everybody who does that. So I would certainly be jumping up and down and waving my arms and celebrating your super chat contribution if I knew anything about it.
No, that was an unexpected thing. I didn't expect to talk about that, but since we did, I'll let you know next time I talk to you if it came off my debit card, and you can let me know if it ever showed up on your end.
Well, I can guarantee you right now. So the only time somebody can give a super chat is when we've got a live stream, and I have never seen that come through.
I'm on live chat. I can see the live chat while I'm talking to you.
Yes.
And I have 4 $2 super chats, and when I did it, I have to. On my phone, it's automatic. I'm supposed to be able to do it automatically, but it won't let me do it automatically. I have to punch in every time my password and the card number on the back of my card, and every time it told me the transaction was complete and it was done. And then it posted on your website. I'm watching it in the super chat. It's there. So if you can't see it, that's the power of Google.
That's very odd.
I might be politically correct. I was saying, don't take the shots, don't take the vaccinations, don't get the test, that kind of shit.
So
I was saying Amish people never get autism. They don't get sick. You know what I mean? Like, I said, I'm not a cow in Nigeria. Like, you don't tell me what to do. I'm not a third world country. I don't need your help. I'm perfectly fine with my oregano oil, my food grade hydrogen peroxide, my silver water, and eating right, non-GMOs. Whatever.
All right, George. Hang on.
Whoa.
Let me explain what's going on here, and I'll tell you what I see. So, everybody out there, understand that I use an application called StreamYard. So I see everybody's comments come through, but I'm not on YouTube. I'm on StreamYard, and that allows me to take people's comments and post them to the screen, like Bubba Batha on the screen right now. So that allows me to take the comments and put them on the screen. The only issue there is that I can't keep up with all the comments coming through on YouTube. So what I've done here is
not you, Dexter, just said I saw the super chats, George.
Okay. So I just pulled up the feed on YouTube on my channel front page, and to see, and the only super chat that I see is from James Voss, who says Rutgers invented college football. People forget. $1.99. So James, thank you so much. We'll acknowledge that in just a second. But I can only go so far back. So the last comment, or the earliest comment I can go back to on this on YouTube, is back to Navy Thomas, and I don't know when this comment was made because I don't have a timestamp on it. But on StreamYard here, which I wish I could show everybody what I'm looking at, I can only go back. Oh, what did I miss here? So I see Noah Thompson there. That's the super sticker comment I referred to initially. I do not see anything from you, George, on StreamYard or on YouTube. Nothing.
Well, a bunch of people in the super chat, I'm talking to them right now in the chat. I mean, they're all saying we saw it, George. And it doesn't matter. Like,
well, of course it matters.
Well, so what? YouTube ripped you off for $4. I did $8, and you would have got $4. Don't squabble about $4.
Well, I'm not going to squabble about it. It's the principle of the whole thing. This is an issue. We've got a problem here.
Well, they all saw it. It's posted.
So what I'm going to do after this show is I'm going to go to the category on YouTube where I can find what contributions were made and see if it's there, because then if it's not there, then that's screwed up. George, super chat. So what I don't want to get lost in all this, George, is thank you so much. I tell you this from time to time in the comment section of the videos, is that I am indebted to you forever for supporting my channel and leaving more comments than anybody by far.
Yeah, that wasn't really my goal in life, but it is true. It's true. I have. Uncle Lou has the thing on his channel. He's like, when I see one comment from Georgia, I know it's like, keep going. There's going to be 120 more. You know, it's like so, something extreme, not like 60, not like 40, like 100. You know, because I like to analyze college football too.
So right now it's 11:39 Eastern time, and I can only go back to 11:20.
I don't know what that means, but I'll take it.
Okay. All right. Well, we got some issues right there. And that's one of the reasons why in recent videos I've included down in the description section of the video where I've got a Venmo and a PayPal account. And I'm certainly not going to get on here and ask people for money. They're available there. And I hope everybody understands that, you know, I put these to good use for stuff like this and just to be able to monetize myself. Therefore, one day the big dream is, as you well know, George, is that I quit the job and I'm doing this full time.
Right.
Absolutely.
Venmo, and what?
PayPal.
Oh, PayPal. Maybe I'll just start doing that. It took me a long time to figure out how to do this shit, man. And I finally did it, and it didn't show up. Damn. But all the people in the chat saw it, Mark. If you go back and read your chat, I got like 20 people saying, I saw it. They all saw it.
What I'm able to do, though, once we're done with the live stream and the video posts, I can go back and watch all the comments, and I'll see if it shows up there, and I'm going to see if it's going to show up, and I will let you know one way or the other. I'll give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down and let you know, hey, I did get it, even though I can't see it. I got it, or I didn't get it. And then you can check to see if it processed through your credit card. Because that's going to be really screwed up if they take the money from you and it doesn't make it to me.
My heart's really palpitating because I realize Ohio State wants it just as bad as we do. And so does Alabama, and so does Georgia, and so does a lot of teams, even teams that you wouldn't think should be there, but they have the skill talent to do it, like Florida State or Miami if they came out of nowhere, like LSU did last year, or Auburn. There's some great freaking teams, even Oregon. You know, I just can't wait because I hope they let them play football. I'm afraid they're going to use them as an example to the country, and they're going to say they all got vaccinated and they have their Bill Gates certificate to give an example to the rest of us, you know, and let them go back and play football. And they'll really give them a shot of salt water or something, you know, and the rest of us will all go like little sheep. I want my shot too, so I can do college football.
Well, does anybody know how difficult it is for them to administer these tests? Meaning that, of course, if we go back to playing college football in the fall, all these players and the personnel, other personnel, the coaching staffs and so forth, are going to have to receive these tests. But
well, that's a game changer for me. That's a game killer. I don't do that because they actually impregnate you with something with that test. Do you really trust Big Pharma, Kia? Haven't you seen any TV commercials lately? If you ever took a Xarelto, file a claim, are you serious? Do you trust them?
Well, I never got to
If you've ever used any drug in the world, you have a right to file a claim. Does that make you feel better? Do you want to do that? Do you want to file a claim? How about not doing it in the first place? I don't need a lawyer. I have enough sense to say no up front.
Well, they're going to have to get a consensus out of these
ovarian
kids.
Cancer alert right now on TV. It says call now. Here's an alert. If you ever took Viagra, call this number to file a lawsuit. Anybody that does any of this shit deserves what they get. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Are you insane? Put food and water in your mouth. At the very worst, you should smoke some weed or drink a beer. That's it.
All
I don't need whatever Bill Gates wants to impregnate me with. I'm not his bitch. Don't stick your needle in my body. I'm not some African wandering the back jungle
All right,
of
George,
Nigeria.
we're getting back to college football here. That's why we're here.
All right.
All right, George.
I didn't spend my life studying and
Have a good
taking
night.
care of myself.
Thank you so much.
He herded into a corral.
It's always
All right,
appreciated, George.
It's my pleasure, Mark. Good night.
All right. I'll let that go too long. I apologize. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So here are a few debate topics I came up with recently. I started to note that it was on my Twitter feed the other day, and I am so sorry that it was on my Twitter feed because at some point it just got to be way out of hand, and I dismissed myself from the conversation. But somebody posted, DeAndre posted something about Clemson 4, Ohio State nothing, and if Clemson and Ohio State played, it would be 45-0, and some ridiculous garbage like that.
The call will start at the beep.
And I don't think I'll ever get into this because we'll keep getting calls, but that's fine. That's why I'm here. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate.
Hey, Nate. How are you?
Pretty good. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you, Nate. How was your day?
Pretty good.
Good.
Well, just a little boring.
A little boring. Yeah.
Because of a little quarantine.
Well, I think a lot of people are bored out there. But you know what I say?
Yeah.
I say this is the time for a lot of people out there that are bored to learn a new skill, gain some knowledge, clean up the house, do some yard work, paint the house, do something, spend some time in the Bible.
I actually
do something.
I actually
productive.
did some yard work yesterday.
Okay.
I did some yard work yesterday, and it was kind of dreadful. Because it was kind of hot out when I was doing it.
It was hot. I wish it was hot here.
Warm.
Okay.
But so sorry for the miscommunication of that. So while George was talking, that's kind of funny. When he was talking, he is funny. If football if football what was I going to say? Sorry. Sorry, Mark. I kind of.
So Nate, your question was if football
were going to play like this year.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Why can I was thinking if I did this on the Xbox 360, and I don't know if you're not into football 14 guy or for video games, but I created
I haven't played a video game probably in 20 years. So I haven't played a video game since my kids were like 7 or 8 years old. So let's say more like about 12 to 15 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not into video games.
So does my parents isn't. But
well, you're at a different stage in life, Nate. It's certainly understandable. But at my age and considering what I've been involved in and so forth, my life is fortunately just that much too significant to be playing video games.
I know. But even I actually created a huge conference. Like I did a big, I don't know if it was like a Big 14 conference. I did the Big 10 conference. I added Alabama and some random teams like say Oklahoma, so we can renew the rivalry for Nebraska, even Missouri, and but I was just if they would do that for Big 10, that'd be cool. Like if they were going to do a big conference for any conference.
So Nate, let me try to help you out. I'm trying to figure out where you're going with this. You want big conferences?
Yeah.
16-team conferences. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you want that? Why is that going to help college football?
Well, because even so, I was imagining if you know how the divisions and stuff, like the Big Ten West, Big Ten East, like all Big Ten West and all the teams, they be in tournament, like a bracket thing, and whoever wins the Big Ten West will play the winner of the Big Ten East.
That already happens, Nate. It's called the Big Ten Championship game.
Oh. Well, I meant like all the teams get a chance to play each other, but like bracket wise, like.
Okay, Nate, I'm going to take this next call, and if you listen in, I'm going to explain to you why having bigger conferences is not better. Okay? Thanks for the call, Nate.
Okay.
Press 1 to start the call.
All right, everyone. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And before we take this call, I'm going to explain why bigger conferences isn't necessarily better. So we have an issue right now, and I'll just outline the issue in the SEC and the ACC. You've got 14-team leagues. They play 8-game schedules. Therefore, every team misses 5 other teams. They only play 8 teams out of the other 13 teams in the conference. Therefore, they miss 5 teams. Therefore, you've got games like, let's say, Alabama and Georgia play this year. They only play once out of every 6 years. The bigger we make these conferences, the more the teams within the conferences won't even see each other, number one. Number two, the larger disparity between good schedules and bad schedules within the conference. The conference schedules are already, there's a big issue in the equality and fairness of the conference schedules. The conference schedules should be equal. They are not now, and the larger you make the conferences, the more that issue is going to be exasperating. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Oh, somebody hang up on me. All right. So I'll get back to our discussion points coming up this week. One would be, maybe I won't. Yeah. Get a couple calls coming in. We'll see who made it. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mr. Rogers? This is J Love T.
J Love T, how are you?
I'm blessed. I'm blessed. And yourself? And happy Easter.
I am blessed as well. That's a good way to put it. I am fully in favor of that that greeting myself. Yes, I am blessed. There is no question about that, and I would love to go through an explanation of that, but not on our college football show. So, J Love, thank you so much. Happy Easter to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, you was about to say something. I'll let you finish before we continue with the schedule realignment.
No, I appreciate that. So this is what I'm going to say. So I was just taking notes a few minutes ago. So there was a tweet sent out by our friend DeAndre, and he loves to brag about Clemson's 4-0 advantage over Ohio State in their all-time football series. And I was just stating that every Clemson fan has every right to stick out their chest and boast about that. They've played Ohio State 4 times in their football history, and they've won all 4 games. But I was just going to kind of give a counterpoint to that and put it all into context and put out there a little video that is going to outline the Clemson versus Ohio State argument. And then it's led me to think about a number of great debates and arguments to be had, and I will be posting those videos soon. All right, J Love T, what do you
How many
have?
championships Ohio State have all time?
National championships 8. Clemson 3.
And how many Clemson have?
3.
Oh, they got a long way to go.
They got a long way to go.
That's my counterpunch.
In the last 50 years, Ohio State, maybe I'm giving away too much of my video information, but in the last 50 years, Ohio State has the best winning percentage in college football, and Clemson is 21st.
Wow.
So 4 games, obviously, that's a lot to brag about, and Clemson fans certainly have that right to brag about that, but that's not the entirety of college football history. 4 games. All right, J Love T.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what you want to talk about, though.
That's facts.
Absolutely.
That's facts. Okay, what I wanted to talk about with the conference realignment too, and you hit it. You basically took one of the viewpoints. The main reason I don't like the super big conferences is what you said. Like, look at Alabama and Florida. They don't see each other. I'm sorry, Alabama and Georgia. They see each other once every 6 years. And as a Miami Hurricanes fan, we go through the same thing because we're already locked in with Florida State, and we don't see Clemson. I think we see Clemson once every 7 years. So yeah, you're right. That is, and I hope, to be honest, I hope it gets broken down less in the future for certain conferences. I just hope that, like what the previous caller said earlier, that you basically, some way, somehow, I know it's not possible, push teams out, hopefully. But teams like Rutgers, I mean, is it easy to push a team like Rutgers out? Because especially with the history, is it possible? I mean, what would you do with Rutgers? Or who else? I could say Northwestern. And who else? Like in the Pac-12, people would say kick California out. So what would you say about that? Would you say put them in the same conference, or just leave it as it is?
Talking about Rutgers in the Big Ten?
Yeah, Rutgers in the Big Ten. Will you keep Rutgers in the Big Ten, or will you push them out? Because history plays a huge part too, but it sounds like people don't care about the history.
Oh, I care a lot about history. I think history is one of the things that distinguishes college football. College football is steeped in tradition, which obviously you don't have tradition without history. A tradition's a tradition because it's done or repeated over and over and over and over. So college football history is very important. I think geography is also important, and balance is important when looking at a conference affiliation. So if I was going to tear the whole thing up, I would kick Rutgers out of the Big Ten.
Okay, so you will kick them out. You will kick them out of the Big Ten, not keep them.
For a number of reasons. It doesn't add anything to the Big Ten, number one. It doesn't add anything in any such way to the Big Ten that matters. And also, the Big Ten is a Midwestern conference. Rutgers and Maryland have nothing in common with the schools in the Big Ten and their football histories.
At all.
Exactly. Nothing.
Great answer. And I have another one. It's probably gonna shy away from this debate, and it's about Miami, because I have a huge issue with the college football world. Not you yourself or Ohio State, because I don't mind taking the trash talking from Ohio State, because at least in every decade they show up some way, somehow. How come Miami is the only school that gets battered during hard times, even though we had the microwave success for the past 25, 30 years? Because you got schools like Notre Dame, Michigan, Georgia. You can add Texas on there.
Mm-hmm.
They don't win anything, but they still keep the respect, which is Miami. We struggle for a little bit. I mean, it happens when we get kicked down by not only the media, but also the recruits in our area. So how do you feel? Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think that it's blown out of, what I'm saying is blown out of proportion, or am I right for feeling the way that I do feel?
because I don't know how people give Georgia's a pass, call them great. You know what I'm saying? But Miami, they get kicked in the groin. You know what I'm saying? And going to the championship is not enough. I mean, that's the Buffalo Bills. So how do you feel for my content? For what I'm telling you? What answer would you give me?
Okay, this is how I'm going to answer this. And I want people to understand that if I don't get your comment to the screen, understand this. So it's 11:59 Eastern time right now. I can only go back as far as 11:46 on the timeline. I can't go back before that. I saw a lot of good comments, but I couldn't get back to them. So just in regards to the application I use that brings the comments to the screen, I can only go back 13 minutes. Therefore, some of those comments have been lost, unfortunately. Okay, back to your question, J Love T. So you're basically stating that Miami gets criticized more than other programs during down times. So the first thing I want to ask you before I'm going to answer this question is, what do you consider to be down? Just not winning national championships? Do you have to win national championships to be up? Or is there a certain standard that you consider? When you say Texas is down, what does that mean to you?
No championship. I mean, the championship.
You got to win national championships to be up? There's only one national championship won every year. So there's not a whole lot of teams. So you're saying a lot of teams are down because there's only like we've only had in the last decade, how many schools have won national championships? Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, Auburn. Since 2009, those are all the schools that have won a national championship. So everybody else is down.
Remember, it's not what I mean by down. It's not on a year-by-year basis, Mark. As yourself.
I'm just wanting a definition of what you consider to be down.
No, it goes through the decade. That's my thing. It goes through the decade. See, all the schools that you just named that won a national championship, I'm not talking about those schools because they have the right to speak. They have the right to feel bolded. I mean, they have the right. They have the right to feel how they feel and talk down on others, especially Clemson. So why Notre Dame, Georgia, Texas, Michigan, why those schools get the pass? Why?
Okay, again, JT Love, I need J Love T. I need you to define for me down. Georgia, to me, okay, Georgia has not won a national championship in 40 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not down. You consider Georgia to be down?
That's down. If you don't win the chip, you're down.
You're down.
That's a discussion. And I really hope that we could sit down with all the other content with the people that you bring in, and we could talk about that's down. If you didn't win a championship in 40 years, you're down. You're down until you win it. That's my opinion. Matter of fact, no. If you was to ask 10 people, they would tell you the same thing. Okay, so which program is stronger? Mark, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Which program is stronger? Which program is stronger, FSU or Georgia? Right now, if you take a whole program and you would like to take the history and do it from the ground up, which program would you take?
Okay,
FSU or Georgia?
So the question you just gave me is a perfect example of what you're talking about. The better program between Florida State and Georgia, it's not even close. It's an easy answer. Georgia is a better football program right this second than Florida State. But Georgia has not won a national championship. Whoa. Hang on. Georgia has not won a national championship for 40 years. Florida State just won one in 2013. So by your definition, Georgia's down, Florida State's not down. I don't know when that timing runs out for you because you haven't defined that. But in actuality, Georgia is a much stronger football program today than Florida State is. So your system doesn't necessarily work.
Who has the easier road to win it?
Pardon me?
Who has the easier road to win it?
Who has the what for winning? I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
I said from the ground up. If you look at history, remember it goes through the decades.
Sure.
It goes through the decades.
Yes.
But you can't say Georgia is on top of FSU when they haven't won it in 40 years. They haven't won it in 40 years. So you mean to tell me? So okay. So I'm a football fan, NFL fan. So you mean to tell me if you're still in an NFL franchise, you would take the Buffalo Bills over the Miami Dolphins because the Bills went to the Super Bowl 4 straight times in the 90s, basically.
Well, that was almost 30 years ago.
Exactly. That's the same thing. Exactly. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And that's another thing also.
When does your championship drought run out, though? You have to come up with some drop dead date that says, okay, you won a national championship too long ago. You're down now. So is Florida State down? By your definition, are they down?
Are they down? They're ahead of Georgia. Yeah, they're down, but they're ahead of Georgia.
So just automatically, because you won a national championship more recently than somebody else, you're a better program.
Yes, and more.
Seriously.
And the amount of trophies you have.
Seriously.
And the amount of trophies you have.
You're telling me that Tennessee's a better program than Georgia? Is what you're telling me.
Which Tennessee Volunteers?
You're telling me Tennessee's a better football program than Georgia. That's what you're telling me.
How many championships Tennessee has?
They won a national title in 1998, more recently than Georgia, so they're a better program.
They're even. They're not better. They're even.
Oh, they're even.
They're in the same boat.
Why are they even?
That's not a trick question, Mark.
They're even. Why?
They're even.
Based on what? What's your criteria for making Tennessee and Georgia even?
That's even. That's even, Mark. That's even, Mark. Okay, Mark. What is the standard for the top 30 football national institutions? What is the standard? I'm not one standard. What are the two standards? What are the two standards? The two standards.
You're asking me what my standards are for ranking football programs?
Yeah.
Number one, above anything, should be their winning percentage. Their winning percentage should be much more important to me than winning national championships, because there are so many variables that go into winning national championships. It's not even funny. I can go through history, and I've done it a zillion times on here, and picked apart national championships to let people know that it's all put into context, that there are national championships that are a joke. By definition, you are telling me that Georgia Tech has a better football program than Georgia because they've won a national championship more recently than Georgia. You're telling me that Georgia Tech, who gets their brains beat out by Georgia every year, or 9 out of 10 years, is a better football program than Georgia because they have more recently won a national championship than Georgia. You're telling me that Colorado, because they won a national championship in 1990, which is more recently than Georgia, has a better football program than Georgia, even though Colorado wins 3 and 4 football games a year.
Okay, so let me answer your question.
You need to go back to the drawing board on your definition of good football programs and bad football programs.
You went around the answer, Mark. You went around the answer. You went around the answer because now you went around. Is Georgia a better football program in history? Point blank period, better than Miami.
In history?
Yes, history. Down. I mean, up and down. Right now. Because Miami is down right now. They're down. They can't win the conference championship. They can't win the national title. And they haven't done it in a while, especially for the past 25 years. They're down. They're completely down. So you're telling me Georgia is a better football program than Miami.
J Love T, let's also understand something. That your definition of history, when you start throwing out history, you can't just confine it to what your narrow thought of history is. I bet you're thinking of history going back to what, 1980?
No, it can go before that. If you want.
History is history. If you want to talk about history, then a national championship in 1925 is going to count just as much as the national championship in 2015. So Miami's football history pre-1980 is beyond insignificant. It's rubbish. They didn't do anything before 1980 and did not win a national championship before 1983. So if you want to go back to the beginning of time, then we're going to start talking about Army being extremely significant and other programs like that.
Okay, so why Miami doesn't get the same path that these other programs get?
Because Miami has basically been a marginal football program for 17 years. Marginal. They just are. I posted a video maybe 2 months ago outlining what Miami football has looked like in the last 17 years. So Miami, of course, won a national championship in 2001. They went back to the national championship game in 2002, and they were really good in 03, 04, and into 05. And then after that, for the last 16 football seasons, Miami has won 57% of its games. That's pretty lousy. There have been, J Love T, consider this. There have been 44 programs that have finished in the final top 10 since Miami last finished in the top 10. 44 programs, 44 teams that have finished in the top 10. So you think when USC is down and when Texas is down and these other programs, you don't think that they get criticized like Miami does?
No.
Okay, maybe you're right. I don't know.
No, I think that USC, yes. USC, yes. I'm not going to lie. USC, yes. That's the only other school. USC. That's it. Who else? Who else? What you said?
Well, it doesn't matter who I bring up, just anybody.
No, but that's the thing, Mark. But that's my issue, Mark. What you being taught, you name a school that I didn't name. I'm talking about Michigan, Notre Dame, Texas, Georgia. So you mean to tell me, as long as winning...
Hey, J Love T, I hate to cut you off, but none of us can hear you now. You're like fading off into nothing. I can't even hear you. Hey, J Love T? Okay. Yeah, we're losing him. So there were a number of people that were trying to call, and I wanted him to finish his point because I was trying to basically outline for J Love T, for as much as I love his calls and he supports the channel and does all those good things, that, wow, I've got people calling and then they cut off, and hopefully we can get them in here.
Start the call or two to
There we go. We'll see who this is. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello, who's on the line?
James Voss.
Hey, James. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I appreciate the contribution, sir. Both, of course, your contribution as an Oregon writer. So this is James Voss on the line from Autzen Zoo, who joins us on a regular basis to talk the Ducks. And also James contributed tonight. James, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I love what you do, obviously. And I always let you know that nobody does it better than you. So had to show my support.
Well, thank you. I hope these, and let me know, based on the other calls that you've heard while you've been online, are you being able to hear the callers?
I have been so far.
Okay.
That last call, at least when it got a little louder, a little more heated, it was tougher to hear. But other than that, George, I could hear loud and clear.
Yes.
Which I know everybody appreciates.
What's on your mind, James?
In the chat, there was some things, and forgive me if you talked about it before, but some suggestions about Boise State joining the Pac-12.
Yes.
And I wanted to maybe just touch on something that maybe a more East Coast audience doesn't quite understand, why a team like Boise State hasn't already joined the Pac-12, because on paper it does seem like they compete, they beat Pac-12 teams regularly, and you'd think, oh, why haven't they joined a Power 5 conference yet? And you made the wonderful money-making signal with your hands while you're in the middle of another conversation. And I wanted to read off just a little number here. In 2018, Boise State's University Endowment Fund was $35 million. Compare that to a low-end Pac-12 school like Oregon State, $595.8 million in their alumni endowment fund.
Wow.
A mid-level number, 912 at the University of Oregon, 912 million. And then at a school like University of Washington, $2.94 billion in their university endowment fund. So certainly as a university, and thinking about, you're not just adding a football program to a football conference when you add a team to a conference. You're adding them to your academics, you're adding them to a whole slew of different things, different sports, and asking them to support in the same way monetarily with their alumni bases and meet an academic standard. And if we want to throw some academic numbers here, the 6-year graduation rates for Pac-12 schools, 96% graduation rate for Stanford, 90% for Cal, 90% for UCLA, USC 90%, Washington at 80%, all the way down. Oregon 66%, OSU 61%. Lowest in the Pac-12 is Utah, 6-year graduation rate at 55%. For comparison, Boise State is 29% in a 6-year graduation rate. That's no shade to them, but clearly a whole host of things would have to happen, change from administrative level, academics level, alumni donation level, for Boise State to even be considered joining Power 5 conference. And right now, I'm not sure about a whole bunch of Idaho TV money. I don't know if a lot of that's pouring in. It's a longer play for them, and it has been for a while at Boise State. And maybe down the line, 10 to 15 years, if we can see some exponential growth for Boise State, maybe if they can hit a nice little jet stream of realignment, Pac-12 might be in their future, or a Mountain West adding a couple other teams and finding their way into a Power 6 conversation if we're even in the same sort of conference postseason situation that we're in right now, which in 15 years I doubt it. It'll be something completely foreign to us probably right now. But yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into the fact that Boise State will probably not be joining the Pac-12 conference as we see it today.
So fortunately, James, you're here to educate us and bring us into the real world. So when I post a video, like I'll be posting several this week talking about realignment, unfortunately, I have to deal with the football world only, because for me to dive into those type of situations involving all the schools that I would want to possibly realign into other conferences, then yes, the real world involves money more than anything, but also politics, academics, and all sorts of other things. But mainly those three components, in addition to the football, that have to be considered, again, realistically in the real world, and trying to determine solutions and best case scenarios for what could actually happen. But if I did the deep dive into all that sort of thing, I'd be producing a video per month. And therefore, I'm just looking at the football and what would be best on the football field. So I appreciate you bringing some reality to the conversation, because that's what's going to drive that. And it seems prohibit Boise State from joining the conference.
Yes, absolutely. And I know reality is less fun, certainly, than just looking at the fact that Boise State completely, as an Oregon fan, I can say they have our number. I hope to maybe one day actually get the better of Boise State, but right now I can't say much more than I can defer to looking at the facts that do happen to be on my side, at least in terms of avoiding playing them yearly or bi-yearly. if they were to join the Pac-12. But I think, and just for the fact checkers in the comment section, I was looking at yearly endowment reports, not the full endowment funds. For some fact checkers in the comments, but I appreciate them for sure. But I do think that I would love to see a scenario in which the money, the alumni, the connections, all the politics worked out to where Boise State and maybe one other, which I don't know, maybe San Diego State, but I think that would be a tough swing as well. But I did see, and if the facts in the comments are correct, San Diego State does have a pretty sizable endowment compared to Boise State, at least. So maybe that might be a more realistic play.
Okay. Yeah. Good stuff there, James. Thanks for digging that up for us and bringing some, again, some reality to the situation and the conversation. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. I'll keep enjoying the show. Nobody does it better than you.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it. All right. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Yeah, who's on the line?
It's Bash.
Hey, Bash. How are you?
Yeah, been a long time. Yeah, just got busy with school and stuff like that. You know, I've gone back and watched live streams and videos, you know, but I hardly ever get the chance to, you know, go into a live stream that you're holding. But here I am.
Yeah, so we're going to be here every Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time during the off
really?
season.
Perfect, because I'm going to be getting off of work around 10 o'clock Eastern.
Very cool.
Anyway, so yeah, there's a good handful of things to unpack. Starting with, I want to start by addressing the Miami fan that called in.
Sure.
And he was kind of like talking about how Michigan, Notre Dame, other programs like that, and Georgia was the most egregious one, but other programs like that get a pass for being irrelevant. And my question to you is, it is kind of rhetorical, but it kind of is like you can answer it. Notre Dame and Michigan, do they really get a pass?
See, the problem with bringing up a situation like he did is, number one, who is he listening to? Who are we talking? I don't know who we're talking about. So there has to be an agreement that Miami's being criticized and these other programs and teams are not. Well, who are we listening? I don't know who we're referencing. Who's out there doing the talking that we're listening to? So first of all, I've got to just, for the sake of the conversation, just say, okay, I'm going to assume you're right and Miami's being criticized and these other programs are not, so we can have a conversation, because there is absolutely no way any of us can measure the social media discussion out there or the football analysts who are criticizing Miami and not these other programs. I don't have the answer to that. None of us do. So I have to take his argument and give him the first point, and just so we can have a discussion, say, okay, I'm going to assume you're right and Miami's being bashed and these other programs are not being hammered for being down. So then the next thing is, he can't answer, what does down mean? I don't know what that means. Yeah. So give me a definition. Well, his definition was simply, you win national championships or you don't win national championships. So if you win a national championship, then you're not down. If you don't win national championships, you could go 11-1 every year and you're down by his definition. Georgia's down because they haven't won a national championship. Okay, even if I concede that point, the schools that win national championships are not down. Everybody else is down. Well, how long does that last? So if you won a national championship 5 years ago, I'm going to assume that still counts in your little scenario of being down or not being down. And okay, how long does that last? And when is that magical year that you suddenly are now down because you didn't win a national championship in the last 15 years, 20 years? What is the criteria?
To create consistency for this debate, we got to really just kind of realize that success in a down time period or an up time period is all relative to the program. Like Alabama was down in the early 2000s, but now they're up because it's relative to a program. But like a program like, let's say, Syracuse back in 2018, or when they had Donovan McNabb, those were up times for Syracuse, even though they weren't nationally competing for a national championship. So to me, it's all relative to the program. And in terms of Miami, the expectation of Miami fans are national championship contending teams, and they've made one New Year's Six Bowl in which they got ran off the field against Wisconsin. So yeah, they have been disappointing, all relative to what their specific expectation is. That's why Michigan does get hammered too, because they can't beat Ohio State and they can't win the big games, is what the fans are saying. These are Michigan fans saying that. It's not everybody out there saying that. All right, and another part I want to talk about, you take a look at Ohio State's recruiting class, and I know you're not like big, like you're not a recruiting guru in terms of being like a complete expert, but this class that they're putting together in 2021 could be the best class in history. I think that's, or in the history of class rankings. I think everybody has heard that, known that. My real question is, talking about the running back position at Ohio State, and I just want to go ahead and say, how much of a testament is this to Ryan Day to go ahead and bring in Trey Sermon as a transfer after Massachusetts injured, and then recruit Travion Harrison and Evan Pryor from the same class to come to Ohio State and fill a void at running back? How much is that worth to the job that Ryan Day has done thus far?
Well, before I answer that question, which is just going to be, it is a rhetorical question. Obviously, his recruiting efforts have been exceptional. I'll just remind everyone that we talk Ohio State football once a week on our live stream with Bucknuts, 247 Sports, Steve Hellwagon there, Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone, and Kevin Noon from Rivals, Buckeye Grove. So those guys help me in the recruiting department, really give us quality recruiting coverage for Ohio State football. So yes, it speaks volumes of Ryan Day that he's able to pull in one of the top running backs in the nation via transfer, and then still able in the same week to go out and get commitments from two of the top running backs in the nation, even though they know that Trey Sermon, well, let's see, that's going to be Trey Sermon's senior year though, right? He played in 17,
yeah, but
18,
Teague is also
19.
They have Teague, Crowley, and Chambers coming back too, so it's not like
Sure.
it's either Evan Pryor or Travion Henderson right away. That's not going to be the case, and they know that. Those two know that.
Yeah, it's exceptional. It's something similar to what Alabama's been able to do, where for a long time, starting in 2009, they had two NFL running backs, and now it's pretty much expanded to practically four that have to share the football. A guy like Josh Jacobs, who's, I believe, won the Rookie of the Year in the NFL, couldn't see the football for a couple of years.
Not only a couple of years, his last year at Alabama, he wasn't even like the main guy getting all the carries. So that's very interesting. All right, last thing, this is more of just kind of like a comment on the conference realignment discussion. And I know you are, talking about in the world where it's just about football, but in reality, it honestly is going to come down to, by 2025, when all these contracts are up and all the major conferences, how big the next realignment is going to be dictated by Texas and Oklahoma. Those two are going to either leave the Big 12 and become independent or join a different conference, or they'll stay in the Big 12. If they stay in the Big 12, I don't think it will change a whole lot. There will definitely be some big changes because, that happens every 10 years or so, even less than that, quite honestly. But if they move, I could honestly see an entire shift in the college football universe to the point where we basically have a Power 4 with Texas and Oklahoma, if they go independent, being included in that Notre Dame class. and the Big 12 would kind of just be an afterthought with all those teams like TCU, Baylor, Iowa State, not really treated as seriously as they maybe should or could be. But frankly, that's just the reality. If you're not a big name brand or you don't have those big name brands in your conference, you are going to fall off the radar, and that could possibly happen to those programs in 2025.
So what you're talking about is basically what was predicted to happen by many people roughly 10 years ago when Nebraska left the Big 12, and the Big 12 also lost Missouri and Texas A&M, and it looked like the Big 12 was going to implode, and then we were going to, once the dust settled, finish with 4 16-team super conferences. So you're talking about the same thing happening that was predicted to happen by a lot of people roughly 10 years ago, happening now.
Yeah, I'm not really predicting that. It's kind of like the same scenario popping up yet again. It just matters what Oklahoma and Texas do when these TV contracts come up for renewal or they expire by 2025. Is the year I've been hearing by multiple different sources, whether it's just YouTube videos or reading articles and whatnot. So, like, I've been digging into that the last couple of days, coincidentally, as you're doing this stuff. And really seeing you talk about this stuff has really made me dig in a little further. But, yeah, it's kind of just like, I feel like Texas and Oklahoma, even though they aren't winning championships, they are still the center of the college football universe. And that's something we kind of got to be aware of when we're discussing conference realignment. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I can't disagree with
that.
All right. All right, Bash. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for your time, Mark.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah, have a nice one.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I may or may not continue depending on any other calls coming in. Oh, we got one. It's probably J-Love T here. Let's see. Got too many coming in at the same time. Here we go. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Here. Hey, Mark, it's Michael Hogue. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing just fine, Michael. I believe you've got me turned up in the background. If you could just tune that down, because otherwise we're going to have a issue.
That was my laptop, by the way. I was just waiting and stuff like that. Hey, got a couple quick questions for you. One is, I think Boise State would be a great addition to the Pac-12. And how much fun it would be to watch all those teams playing on a blue field on Saturdays.
Oh, it'd be great. From a strictly football standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world from a competitive standpoint on the football field. James called in to let us know that it's not really feasible from a financial standpoint.
In your opinion, do you think it is? I do. Or do you think he's overlooking with all the other teams within the Pac-12 if they did go?
Overlooking what?
Like with the other teams, can they self-sustain it to where they would be successful in the Pac-12? Like the basketball teams, the baseball teams, stuff like that.
I know nothing about what Boise State brings to the table in the other sports. I don't pay attention to the other sports. I have no idea what Boise State does in any other sport. I certainly have an idea in men's basketball. They've never been any good that I know of. I think the other
point number two
is as long as they generally field scholarship athletes in the other sports, the non-revenue sports don't even matter. That would not prohibit that deal from being brokered.
Point number two, that one caller talked about how teams wasn't relevant, like Georgia and stuff. What about the say in the 80s? What about Notre Dame? What about Colorado? What about West Virginia? If memory serves, I don't think West Virginia won the national championship. I know Colorado did. I know Penn State won 2 of them, and I think Notre Dame won 1, and they played like back-to-back years, I think. How relevant do you think, even though they're still relevant today, do you think they took a slide off back then, or what do you think about that?
Well, J Love T, I will refrain from speaking too negatively about him because I enjoy his contribution here, but I just think his, as I outlined to the last caller, I just couldn't follow his line of thinking. So number one, he was telling me that Miami is criticized more than other programs for being, quote unquote, down. Well, first of all, nobody can substantiate that. I don't know who he's talking about criticizing Miami more than anybody else. So I have to give him that point to start it out. To even have a conversation, I have to give him that point and just assume that he's correct. Number two, his entire definition of being up or being down is entirely predicated on winning a national championship, which I don't agree with. But even once I gave him that condition, then his timing mechanism and whole system broke down and didn't make any sense.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you there. Point number 3. What is your take about this? I've been thinking about this since I talked to you a couple weeks ago and stuff like that. What do you think it would happen if all the conferences started, they're, okay, like the divisions, like most of them got divisions. They play all the division, and then they play maybe like, I'll tell you the Big Ten, there are 7 teams in each division. They play the 6 teams in the West. I'll take Purdue example. They play the 6 teams there, and then they play, and they rotate every other year. They leave one team out, and they play 6 of the 7 teams in the East division. Do you think that would work with all college football, or do you think that'd be accident waiting to happen?
How long?
And how much more fun would it be?
How long would the season be?
It would still be the 12-week season. But what I'm saying is eliminate the non-conference, is what I'm saying. Just play a regular 12-conference game schedule.
We would play no non-conference games. None.
No. Or do you think they should still be non-conference?
Yes, we want non-conference games.
But do you think it would be more, I mean, how much more interesting do you think it'd be if they just eliminated the non-conference and just played? And stuff like that, because I'm tired of Alabama, like, avoiding Georgia during regular season, Florida, stuff like that.
Well, nobody's avoiding anyone, Michael. Nobody's avoiding anyone. That's just the way the conference is set up from a scheduling standpoint. That doesn't mean Alabama's avoiding anyone. I would think everybody else would be avoiding Alabama. But it has nothing to do with anybody avoiding anyone. It's just that they don't play enough. But if you're going to confine these teams from only playing conference games, how boring would that be, number one? That we would have no conference games. We would never see another conference. That would be boring. Number two, it would make it nearly impossible for this college football playoff selection committee to determine who's good and who's not good, because there would never be any cross-sectional games that would be played.
Well, true. I guess you do make a good point, though. But I mean, like, there's times where, I mean, like, yeah, Purdue gets 3 teams from the Big Ten East every year. I would just seem like to maybe play more. I'm just saying the same like the other teams. I think they would be competitive games. But yeah, you do make the point though about it would mess everything up with the TSP. That's what I'm saying about that. My last point is I got that for you. I just need to figure out how to get that for you. I got the Purdue helmet for you. I just got to figure out how to get it to you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So why don't you send me an email at MarkRogersTV@gmail. So that's MarkRogersTV@gmail. And we'll trade emails there.
All right.
Thank
I would
you,
like
Michael.
that too. And last thing I forgot to say was that Purdue Schedule. I was watching and was like that. And I somewhat agree with you because I was just thinking, I'm thinking it could be like it was a few years ago where Purdue can get up, if they get off to 0-3 start again, especially with losing to Air Force and Memphis, how much of a derailment do you think that'd be for Jeff Ross? Losing their first 3 games of the season with Nebraska, Memphis, Air Force, and I'll even throw in Boston College. Because you had most of those as toss-up games early in the season.
Winning breeds winning because players want to sign with schools that are obviously competitive. And so that would be a huge hit to recruiting, of course, because if they lose all 3 of their non-conference games, they're most likely not going to make a bowl game. So just like with any other school that's struggling to compete, that would be extremely detrimental to making money and competing and recruiting. Yeah, losing's not good for anybody.
No, it's not. And I can't remember off the top of my head. I think you might have had it as a win and loss, but would you be surprised if Memphis and Air Force did beat Purdue?
Would I be surprised? No, I would not be surprised at all. No. They just went 11-2 and beat Washington Washington State in a bowl game. Purdue just lost to Nevada last year in a non-conference game. Even when they had the good season under Jeff Brom in his first year, they lost to who'd they lose to? They lost to
they lost to Missouri. They lost to
Central Michigan, Western Michigan, whoever it was.
No, it was Missouri, Central Michigan, and Northwestern, and they all came down to late plays in the fourth quarter.
Central Michigan, yes. So for a program,
no, Eastern Michigan, that's Central Michigan still.
For a program that's lost to Eastern Michigan and Nevada in the last 2 years, it would not surprise me that they lost to Air Force.
And speaking of Air Force, how good do you think they can be this year? Do you think they'll be bowl eligible, or do you think they're still reloading a little bit?
Oh, I would think that Air Force can at least be bowl eligible.
Just was wondering stuff like that. All right, Mark, thanks for your time. I hope you and your family have a great Easter today. Thanks for your time. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Michael has also left us with a comment on the screen that needs to be corrected here. So, Michael, yes, there were times in the 80s and 90s in which Ohio State was down. And again, down depends on the program, depends on what you mean by down. During the 1980s, Ohio State, Earl Brose's last season went 6-4-1. They started the season ranked in the top 5 in the nation. They lost a series of games in November that were razor tight, and they went 6-4-1. The next season, John Cooper was hired. They got off to a rough start. They had a bad football team. They went 4-6-1. So from that standpoint, Ohio State was a pretty bad football team for really 1 year, maybe 2 years, 1987, 88 for sure. Then they got better. They went 7-4-1, 8-4, 8-4. So they weren't down for long. And then by 1993, they went 10-1-1, so they were not down there. Trying to get this call on speaker. And give me just a second to explain my point here that Michael's posted. So Ohio State in the 1990s, they were not down at all, Michael, during the 1990s. They almost won national championships in 1993, 95, 96, 97, 98. They had a down year for 1 year in 1999 at 6-6. During the Tressel era, Ohio State was never down. So I just want to clarify Michael's statement right there. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Hawkins. How you doing, Mark?
Hawkins, how you doing?
Good, buff man. Good. I'm just shaking my head with the lack of information of some of these callers, bro.
Yeah, I've seen you comment a few times there in the live stream.
Yeah, the Miami guy, you clearly stated Miami hasn't been worth two craps for the last 17 years.
Yeah.
57%. I mean, come on. And Miami's not being picked on unfairly any more than USC, Texas, and clearly I'm a Gator fan. So I want to say that first of all.
Yep.
I hate Georgia with a passion, okay? But unfortunately, Georgia's program is much better than Miami's right now. And anybody, historically, if you want to go back 30 or 40 years, no, Miami's way better. But look, Miami hasn't been worth crap for almost 2 decades now.
Yeah, anytime somebody brings an argument to the table, I enjoy the discussion and the debate. But first of all, you need to define what your argument is. And when you can't do that, it's difficult to pin somebody down to an argument when they have no idea what their argument really is.
Yeah, I couldn't follow him. But I did want to ask you 2 questions. I'll try to keep it to 2 and not 20. I want to talk to you about the SEC quarterback, as you had mentioned that, and you haven't got a chance to talk about that.
Yep.
Being a Florida fan, I'm definitely under the belief, not just because I'm a Florida fan, that Kyle Trask looks like to be the best returning quarterback
Yeah, he does.
in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
Well, I'm going to be posting a video here. I can't guarantee when it's going to come out because I'm going to get to as many positions in as many conferences as possible. But certainly, as you can understand, SEC quarterback is going to be near the top of my list, where I will be naming what I believe to be the top 5 quarterbacks in the conference. And once I started to think about that, it's a difficult call because there is probably less, not necessarily less talent, but less experience and proven productivity coming back at that position in the SEC than at any time I can remember. When you think about Alabama and LSU losing arguably the 2 best quarterbacks, not even arguably, the 2 best quarterbacks in the conference, and then obviously Georgia. And then beyond that, a lot of marginal quarterbacks coming back. Tennessee doesn't know who its quarterback's going to be. Kentucky lost its quarterback. Terry Wilson's coming back to replace, obviously, he was hurt last year.
Gatewood will beat him out?
I don't think he's going to beat him out. And especially
really?
Whether who's going to beat him out?
I think Joey Gatewood will probably be the starting quarterback at Kentucky.
I would have loved to have seen spring practice play out to see where we stood on that. If nobody's familiar out there, Joey Gatewood is the transfer from Auburn that was more of the pro-style quarterback in the competition with Bo Nix at Auburn. So, yeah, you got Terry Wilson versus Joey Gatewood at Kentucky. Got, of course, Jamie Newman at Georgia. Kellen Mond still in play at Texas A&M. We'll see if Miles Brennan's any good at LSU.
Bo Nix at Auburn.
Bo Nix at Auburn, who I expect to get better. Of course, he was put under fire in his freshman season there.
And we know Arkansas will be horrible because they have Felipe Franks.
Yeah, Felipe Franks at your old guy at Florida.
Yeah, thank God he's gone. Thank God he's gone. Thank God Almighty he's gone.
Yeah, people didn't think that necessarily when he went down against Kentucky, but Kyle Trask turned out to be a very capable quarterback. I like Kyle Trask. I think he's really good.
Yeah, considering the guy didn't play since high school, I think what he did was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. For him to step in that game, get the job done, lead the Gators to a comeback, and then they finish in the top 10 with 11 wins. Did a great job.
And Florida had no running game either.
No running game. That's a great point. That's a great point. They, I just was watching the other night. They were replaying the Georgia game, and you're talking about averaging like 1.5 yards per carry in that game, and he had no support from the running game, and you were in it. It could be argued that Florida gave LSU its best game, even though the final score was 42-28, especially considering it was in Death Valley and you had a lead in the third quarter that you gave LSU its toughest challenge of the season. Could be argued.
Yeah, I think that's not even questionable. If you watched all of LSU's games last year, you know that Florida definitely gave them their toughest battle.
Yeah, so we will post a video with our top 5 SEC quarterbacks, but don't be surprised if Kyle Trask is number 1.
Yeah, I won't be. Let me ask you this about realignment.
Okay.
I was listening to your guy that came on there and was talking about, now obviously we want to get away from the 16 team conferences. We'd like to probably move. I think it makes more geographical sense to probably get them down to about 12. And I like the idea of kind of reinventing a new Big East conference. I don't know if you want to call it the Big East again. I think those are good ideas, especially since they're talking about expanding the college football playoff to 8 teams, which I'm really happy with it at 4. But I think eventually, because everybody wants to get their team in there from their conference and get more money, that unfortunately it'll probably end up moving to 8 teams. And the super conferences really don't. They really, you know, you got your Missouri, your Texas A&M, and your Arkansas, and none of those schools belong in the SEC. They should all be in the Big 12 or a part of a Southwest Conference or something. You know, that maybe they should reinvent the Southwest Conference. I don't know. But to me, he mentioned South Carolina leaving for, you know, possibly leaving to go to the ACC. And I thought about that, and I thought that doesn't make really any sense. Why would the ACC want South Carolina? They don't add anything to the conference if they were to leave. And
They
as a
pack out
Florida
their football
fan,
stadium every Saturday.
yeah, they definitely pack their stadium out,
And that
they're
doesn't
good
happen.
supportive
And
fans.
as you well know, that doesn't happen much in the ACC outside of Clemson, and even Florida State has been playing to less than capacity crowds in the last few years. So hardly anybody's filling stadiums in the ACC anything close to South Carolina.
Well, I think Florida State is due to the fan base refusing to support a coach that was driving a Rolls-Royce program into the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the fans' way of saying, nah, we're tired of this.
Yeah.
And get somebody in here who can coach.
Good point.
That's my opinion. Now, I am, as a Florida fan, because you're talking about history, I'm really tired of seeing, like, Florida used to play Auburn I'm sure you're aware of this, used to play Auburn every single year.
Yep.
Well, because of the expanding of the conference, we don't play Auburn every single year anymore. And there's also been talk about Georgia wanting to move this game away from Jacksonville and going to a home and home or something of that nature, maybe playing Atlanta one year, playing Jacksonville another. I'm sick and tired of that. You know, I'd like to see Florida play Miami every single, and I'm telling you from a Florida standpoint and from the football field standpoint and winning championships.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather see Florida play Miami every single year, get a couple new rivalries, like maybe with Clemson. You got your Florida State rivalry because the Auburn rivalry is no longer there. The LSU rivalry is a little bit more recent. But the Miami rivalry, to have that back every single year and to cut the SEC's footprint out of the state of Florida would be huge, I think. And if somebody like Florida would actually consider leaving the SEC to go to the ACC, now you're going to create more parity and more balance within college football. Just think about what the ACC, where their stature would be if they added Florida to the ACC. Now, if the SEC loses Florida, they're scrambling to try to find somebody to fill that void. And I think from a football standpoint, it would be better for Florida to join the ACC. I think Clemson's got it. Florida State's always had it good being in the ACC until they've run into the poor coaching the last few years. Now Clemson has been riding that. They just filled the void that Florida State left. But the ACC can compete. The problem with the ACC is they haven't had great coaching at all these schools at the right time. But if they had great coaches, if Urban Meyer went to the University of Miami, can you just imagine what he could do there?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So you as a Florida fan would want to join the ACC?
Hell yes. I'd like to play Miami every year.
Yeah.
I keep the Florida State rivalry. Those two rivalries would be the biggest to me. LSU rivalry, hey, I like that rivalry. But if you ask me if I'd rather play Miami or LSU every year, I'd rather play Miami every year. We've already lost the Auburn rivalry. Tennessee rivalry with Florida it's a joke. We've beaten them 13 out of the last 14 years. It's not a rivalry anymore. Anybody with common sense that watches college football knows that Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama, Tennessee are not rivalries anymore. And the Georgia rivalry, if they're talking about packing up and being sissies and wanting to move the game away from Jacksonville and making it a home and home, they take away the luster and what made that college football rivalry unique. And so if we were to lose that rivalry, what the hell would be the point of staying in the SEC anymore? I'm saying let's go create some new rivalries with Virginia Tech, Clemson. And it's better for the University of Florida from a football standpoint to go to the ACC. And like I said, it would make the ACC more valuable. And all our sports, especially basketball, would be better going into the ACC. We could add a lot to the ACC and basketball as well. I know we're strictly talking about football, but just think how much of a better brand the ACC is in football if Florida was to join. And what would it do? It would bring the SEC down if Florida left, because then the SEC has no school. They have no presence actually in the state of Florida. I hate being a Gator fan. I think you like the Hurricanes. I hate it right now that all these programs are coming down there and just getting all the best recruits out of the state of Florida. If the Florida keeps all their best recruits in the state, those other teams are looking up at the Florida schools.
Did you just call me a Hurricanes fan?
I thought you were. I know you're a Buckeyes fan, right? Is that right?
I am.
Okay, I thought maybe you were a Hurricane fan, but you're not.
No, sir.
Okay, well, that's good for you then.
I just try to cover everyone, is what I attempt to do.
But to my point, you see the point that I'm trying to make. A lot of these people don't have the foreseeable foresight to see in the future. They're always thinking stuck in the mud. But I'm telling you, if they keep, the expansion in the league, especially the SEC, has hurt a lot of the football rivalries that have been in the SEC. It's added it's put teams in the league that don't belong in there. That's just my opinion, Mark.
Well, everything that you're saying makes sense, but it all comes down to who has control over this realignment that we're talking about. If the SEC has any say, they're sure as hell not going to want to lose a team in Florida in the SEC. They do not want to be kicked out of Florida.
Okay, but Florida needs to look at it from a standpoint of not this group mentality, this herd mentality, and say, we're going to do what's best for the SEC. University of Florida should look at it and say, you know what, we're going to do what's best for the University of Florida. And if that means joining the ACC, why should they not consider that?
Well, from a financial standpoint, I would think staying in the SEC is what's best for the University of Florida. If you're looking at strictly winning, obviously going to a much easier conference is, and we don't know what's going to happen 10 or 15, 20 years down the road, but it's pretty safe to say that the SEC is going to continue to be better, substantially better than the ACC. Therefore, the Florida could go, if they joined the ACC Coastal Division right now, they would obviously own the thing. And again, I'm stuck in the mud thinking about what's going on right now. You're looking down the road.
You're talking about, you're talking about the money part of it too. Well, if the University of Florida joins the ACC, who are they going to get to replace Florida? That's a geographical that makes any sense at all. There's nobody there for them to grab, and that would change the money portion of things. If a school like Florida, people say, well, Florida will stay because of the money. Well, if Florida goes to the ACC, that's going to improve the ACC's money stock big time. That's going to make a lot bigger brand, and they'll be able to command much more than where they're currently sitting. So what I'm saying is if they were to decide to go, they're going to get money if they go over there, and it's going to improve the ACC brand. That'll improve what the ACC makes and what they can pay out, and it makes it a better a move as far as winning championships goes.
Okay, so certainly, yes, Florida leaving the SEC damages that conference, and it adds to the ACC. I don't know if it offsets it as much to bring the ACC to the level of the SEC. And I would think that the SEC to stay in Florida would go down and grab UCF.
Well,
It's a big school.
that's the only program I think that they would, and probably because of the academics, which the SEC really doesn't have really high academic standards. I mean, Florida, you got Vanderbilt in Florida, and then after that, it's probably Texas A&M and Georgia. But the standards that, you know, the guy was talking about endowments and what kind of schools. Florida has about a $2 billion a year endowment to that school. So Florida, as far as their academics, is really more closer aligned to an ACC league than it is the SEC. I think it's just tradition that people can't get that out of their mind. They think, oh, Florida should never leave the SEC, that they should go in there. But I'm telling you, it makes more sense. Florida could schedule, you know, get Miami back on the rivalry. They could add these new rivalries that would be pretty cool, like a Virginia Tech or a Clemson. And you know what? Florida, being that they play 3 non-conference games, who's to say Florida couldn't schedule Georgia to play a non-conference game every year?
Well,
when you look at it from that,
I'm a bit surprised as a Florida fan that you're really excited about the Virginia Tech series. That doesn't seem to necessarily move me.
Well, Virginia Tech moves me more than Missouri, which we play every single year now.
Yeah, but it's not just Virginia Tech. It'd be Virginia Tech and Syracuse and Pitt and the like. Well, I'm going to take another one of these calls. I appreciate you calling in. It was a good conversation.
All right, have a good one, sir.
All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.
The call will start at the beep.
Let's see who's on the line. Yeah, who's on the line?
Mark, how you doing tonight?
Hey, DeAndre, I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, we got something started on Twitter last night, didn't we?
Oh, well, I tell you, that sparked, I looked at my phone every so often. I would see like 20-plus notifications on there constantly.
No, yeah, it was funny. I mean, these guys, they take it too seriously. Dude, I mean, it's something nice to think about, and you're right, I should have stayed on topic. And I work at a prison. I deal with inmates every day. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. Because that's what
well, I appreciate that.
You know, people make mistakes. People make mistakes, and I was wrong. But what kills me, and all just
what were you wrong about?
I was wrong about not knowing who was on that team in 2014.
I tripped you up on 1 or 2 people. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, DeAndre, before I let you go here, before I let you continue, I want to let you know that you've inspired me to post a video where I'm basically going to say, okay, Ohio State Clemson fans, obviously you have played 3 times recently, and there's a lot of contention between the 2 fan bases. So I'm basically going to say, Clemson fans, this is what you have to brag about. Ohio State fans, this is what you have to brag about as a counterpoint, and then have at it.
Well, you know, Martin, I have the utmost respect for Ohio State compared to Michigan. And the reason why I say that, we all know that there was some social injustice a long time in this country. And growing up, I respected Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, USC, Pitt, Penn State, schools that came down. Michigan State's another school that came down to the South and got African Americans to take to go to school to play sports and get an education to better their lives. Now, after a certain point in time in our country, you know, things started changing, and there was intersegregation, and people migrated back down south. Most of the best football talent right now is down south. We all know that. I think somebody put it out there the last, since 2007, somewhere around that time, most of the championships have been from southern teams outside of course, Ohio State, who does a lot of recruiting in Texas and Florida.
Yep.
Under Urban Meyer. So Ohio State's a great program. But my problem is Clemson cannot help who they play in who they play. There was a time that Florida State dominated for 13 years. They was independent. They couldn't help who they scheduled years in advance. Clemson tries to schedule. They play 2 SEC teams
every year. You know, they schedule who they keep. It's not our fault that South Carolina has issues or Texas A&M had a bad year this year. You can't help what Wake Forest is doing or whoever else that you play, what they're doing. But all the time that was upset to me about Ohio State fan. That's the first thing they bring up. Ohio State has a better football program because of that social issues that I named. Now, if those social issues wasn't there back then, how even would the programs would have been? We had all those players went up north. Not just that those programs like Ohio State, they benefited because that's what most of the jobs were at that time. Look at the University of Pittsburgh. Nobody talks about how great Pittsburgh program was, but that was one of the best cities in America, just like Cleveland and Detroit. So you had a lot of players that you can go from that talent pool, but nobody ever talks about that. Now all the jobs and stuff are down south, and then most of the growth is down south. So that's where all the best players in. Also, I don't think you brought it up, but the state of Georgia has more talent in it than North Carolina and South Carolina combined. That's crazy. The city of Atlanta itself, by itself, has more talent than North Carolina and South Carolina. So, I mean, most of the talent's down south now in major cities like that, just like it was with Pitt and Ohio, Cleveland area, Cincinnati, and Detroit back in the day. So that's why those programs were so much dominant. There's a lot of factors into that. But now it's done changed. But like I said, I respect Ohio State. I joke around with them. They were like, Clemson wouldn't beat Ohio State 45 to nothing. Of course they wouldn't. that was a pretty good team. Now you look at who's on that team. Michael Bennett. I mean, I didn't even know if Bosa was up there. I know the Bosa bros didn't play together, but they were back to back.
Yeah,
and that's a pretty great team that you can name right there. And that team was really good. I know they lost to Virginia Tech early in the year, 35-21 in Columbus. That Virginia Tech team lost to Wake Forest 6-3 in double overtime.
Yeah, that
Wake Forest team was like
J.C. Barrett's first. That was his second start. He started against Navy week 1. And you probably remember he wasn't supposed to be the starting quarterback. Braxton Miller was the starting quarterback, and he got hurt his shoulder just like a week before the season started.
Right.
So, yeah, they weren't coming on all cylinders yet.
Yeah. So, like I said, hey, I mean, teams lose. Clemson lost to Pitt, Syracuse, on the way to win the national. Well, I don't think they won the national championship when they lost to Syracuse, but they won it when they lost to Pitt. Teams lose. I mean, Alabama done lost to Ole Miss a few times on some crazy plays. Teams lose. I mean, that happens, especially now that you're not playing. What you play 13 games here now because of the conference championship game. It's hard to go undefeated. I mean,
sure.
With those 13 games without something crazy happening. But like I said, I have a lot of respect for Ohio State fans. I just couldn't take the fact that, like you said, stay on top of it. We were talking about Clemson 2018 and Clemson and Ohio State 2014, and they're bringing up Clemson's schedule. I'm like, it's not their fault.
Yeah,
and then 2 years, I think you brought it up 3 years ago, Clemson had the best schedule.
Yeah, when
I mean, the ACC had the best schedule.
Absolutely. I thought the ACC was the best conference in America in 2016. So anyway, it would be one thing if Clemson played this easy schedule and then we voted on the national championship. But they go to an ACC championship game, which of course hasn't been very competitive. But then they go and win in the 2 seasons that they've won a national championship. They go and they win 2 games against elite teams in the college football playoffs. So they've done that.
Yeah. And I saw, listened to your last gentleman talk about Florida coming to the ACC. That would never happen. And I just don't think that would ever happen. And the reason why I think the expansion is going to have a hard time, that Notre Dame ACC contract, I don't think it ends until 2027. And if Notre Dame joins any conference, they have to be the ACC first, or they had to pay some major money
to the ACC, because the ACC network money is better than the NBC money that Notre Dame is getting right now. But Notre Dame doesn't want to join the ACC because they want to keep their rivalry with Stanford and USC because they recruit California. So every year they have one game in California, which they said they're trying to hold on to. So that's why they said they Powell would never join the ACC fully, from what I understand. The reason why they're, but I think the next team to join the ACC will probably be Cincinnati or West Virginia, to give Pitt, to bring that rivalry back with Pitt, Virginia Tech, and those schools up there. Because the closest school to West Virginia in the Big 12 is Iowa State.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. They try to figure out what school it is. It doesn't matter. Yeah, they're all so far away.
Right. So I think that's what I think is going to happen next. I don't think that the ACC is going to. I don't know. With that Notre Dame contract, it's kind of hard to see with the ACC. I don't think there's going to be a big time expansion unless the Big 12 that's taking teams from out of nowhere, like I said, like Cincinnati, to go with it. Because one time before UConn got in all that trouble, in basketball, there was talk that the ACC was going to let UConn in before they can dominate that New York market, because New York don't got any major basketball college sports there. So they were going Connecticut, as you know, is right there. So they were going to take all of that market with the Boston College market and Syracuse divided up in there. And that's what they said they were trying to aim towards last time I heard anything about expansion in this area. As far as the ACC goes. In Florida, I don't think they'll ever
I kind of think that's faulty thinking about grabbing these major markets just because there are a lot of people there. Boston College doesn't really register. If Boston College doesn't register to the point that they don't in Boston, UConn is not going to be registering in New York City. It's just
right.
All right, DeAndre. Anything else?
All right, Mark. Man, you keep staying safe.
You too.
We have some more conflict. I put another one up there that I saw. There's the reason why I came up with some of those comments, that the questions about who beat who. I still play NCAA 2014 when I'm really, really bored. And somebody asked the question, who will win between Alabama in 2012 and Florida State in 2013? I just put it out there. I don't know who will win because I can't remember who was on the Alabama team, to be honest with you. I remember Florida State, but I don't really remember Alabama outside. Eddie Lacy might have been on that team.
Yes, he was.
But I really don't remember that team.
A.J. McCarron, sure. Yeah,
right.
Amari
But
Cooper.
Mark, you keep staying safe right there because I know how bad it is out there in your area.
Yep.
Compared to down here in North Carolina. So you keep being safe, you and your family, and social distance, and everybody out there listening. You have a great night, Mark. I keep listening to the show.
Yep, let's all be wise and do the right thing. Thanks, DeAndre. Appreciate that.
That's fine.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Eastern time, we are going live for 1 hour to talk Notre Dame football. At 7 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday night, we talk Florida State football live here. And then be looking out for all the videos that we'll be posting concerning the NFL draft and recruiting and a number of the topics that we're debating tonight. I will have much to say about those, and those will be showing up in a video post coming your way very soon. If you guys have recommendations of great debate topics, so for example, and you guys understand that running a YouTube channel, and even though people would like, certain people want me to post, let's say, a review of the Kansas football schedule, unfortunately, for as much as I want to do that, nobody watches it. But, for example, the other day, I posted a video in which I was in a conversation with Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast about the perceived talent gap between Ohio State and Michigan, and it's pushing 20,000 views. So I need to start focusing on what is going to bring in views. So if you have any debate topics that you think will be interesting, please send them in the comment section, and I will jump on those. I'm working on about 4 right now. So appreciate you guys jumping on board. I will look at the last few comments that came in, and then we will sign off. We've been on here for over 3 hours. So I'm hungry. What can I say? All right. We will see everybody back here very soon. And yeah, keep contributing in any way that you possibly can. Like the videos, please. Share the videos on social media. And, of course, subscribe right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Would love to get to 20K very soon. We'll see you all tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern.